Good afternoon. As you log in, can you do two things for me? Can you change your name to reflect your county if you haven't already done so? And can you put your name in the chat section, which will make it much easier for administration later in finding out who was here. Okay. It's 1:05. Let's get going. All right. Welcome. I'm going to ask Sam to mute you if you haven't already muted yourselves. Obviously, if you want to speak, either put a message in chat, or if we're having a discussion about something, wave and put a message in chat or something, anything to draw my attention or Sam's attention to something. If there are a couple of presentations, one from Jeff Smith early-ish on, about the progress of cases under the L&E, and one this afternoon about just membership and marketing in general. If during those you have any questions, rather than disturb the flow, please put those questions in chat, and Sam or Gordon will pick up on them, and we will call upon you to speak when the presentation has finished. One last request: if anybody is here who didn't hear me earlier, please sign in via chat. At the bottom, put in your name and county, and change your name on Zoom to reflect your county as well, please. Thank you. You do that by right-hand clicking on your name and choosing change name or something like that. I can't do it, so. Right, having said all that, let's get underway. Apologies for absence. First, I have apologies from Gillian Fawcett and Anthony Golding, both unable to make it today, unfortunately. So we move swiftly on to announcement of this year's awards. Now, because of the nature of the meeting, unfortunately, people aren't going to be here. So I don't plan to go on at length about this as I would were they here in person, but I will name check everybody and make a couple of special mentions at the end. All these details will be up on the website. Some of you appear to have uncontrollable cameras. Could you please stabilize them, because it is difficult to concentrate if things are moving around too much in your peripheral vision. Right. The Youthbridge Award this year has gone to a young gentleman who has done an awful lot for Youthbridge, organised things. He's been helping out with the Law and Ethics Committee and is soon to be voted onto it, and that's William Clennell. The EBU and EBED Tom Bradley Award, some of you with long memories will remember that Tom Bradley was a long-time treasurer of the EBU. This award is given to services for education, and recognises those who have made a significant contribution to Youthbridge, and this year the Tom Bradley Award goes to Holly Kilpatrick of Oxfordshire. Dimmy Fleming Awards, again these are the ones I'm particularly sorry I'm giving short shrift to, go to Sarah Matthews of Herefordshire, Dick Pathan of Leicestershire, John Wilcox of Leicestershire, and Malcolm Carey of Suffolk. So well done and congratulations to all of them. And I believe local presentations are being arranged for them. Now, the Tony Priday Award, in memory of Tony Priday, surprisingly enough, this year goes not to a person, but to an organisation. It goes to RealBridge in recognition of their bringing a product on board very quickly after lockdown. Everybody was playing on BBO, and then RealBridge came along and changed the game in many respects. And it's got a lot of admirers. Some people still prefer BBO. Some people couldn't live without RealBridge. But during a time of crisis, it provided a much needed link to the outside world for a lot of people. And instead of just seeing names on the computer, they got to see people that they were playing against and could interact with them when they couldn't do so in real life. So Graham, Hazel and Shireen Mohandas, the progenitors of RealBridge, will be receiving a Tony Priday Award in due course. I say in due course because last year's Tony Priday Award went to Peter Donovan, and it's still sitting downstairs in my house. So due course can take quite a long time sometime. Finally, we're awarding a silver award to a gentleman from Oxfordshire, whom most of you will probably know. You will certainly know if you've been involved in county working groups or any bridge in the Oxfordshire area. They're loyal servant for a good many years and a genuine contributor to the improvement of life in the county, and a contributor beyond that. This year's silver award goes to Robert Proctor, and I hope you will all join me. You don't actually have to do anything, but I hope you will all join me in sort of nodding your assent at all these awards for all these people who in my opinion and in the opinion of the board, deserve them. Right, okay. Next, the minutes of last year's AGM. Are there any matters of accuracy arising? I can't see anybody, so chat. I can't see everybody, so chat message if there are would help. No, can't see anything. All right.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Sorry, someone said hello, but I don't know who it was.
Richard Ray.
Okay, right. Richard Ray, do you have a matter of accuracy?
Keith Bennett and I were Karen's apologies, where in fact we were at the meeting. Karen is aware of that and said she would make the amendments. Has she done so?
Yes, she's nodding yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's all. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Matters arising. Anything? 3, 2, 1. Okay, on we go. Right, the chairman's annual report. What a year again. If we thought last year was bad, perhaps this year was even worse in many respects. But you'll have seen the annual report. We've kept calm. We've carried on. The online game has continued to flourish, although of course it's dropping off a bit now. And the real life game is taking a the face-to-face game, real life, I have been told, implies that I think it's a real game and online bridge isn't. So if I call it real life, that's not what I mean. The face-to-face game is coming back, but it's coming back slowly. People are still reluctant to play, and I can understand that. And the news this week, frankly, is not going to change that for the better, unless somebody comes along and tells us that the Omicron variant isn't a problem after all, and we continue on our upward curve. We've had to cancel the remainder of our competitions for this year. We did hold the Eastbourne Summer Festival, and not many people turned up, but those who did turn up enjoyed it and were grateful for the opportunity to see some people. And indeed, it's where I met my colleague on the board, Gail, for the first time. But it turned out it wasn't, because we played against her the last time we all played at Eastbourne and we'd all forgotten. But never mind, it was sort of the first time. Everybody had a jolly good time, but it did lose money. And there was no indication that any further competitions taking place live would be sufficiently well attended to sustain them. And whilst we were prepared to take a hit on Eastbourne, we could not continue to do this. It was not in the EBU's financial interest to do so. So regrettably, we've moved online. But that's what's happened. What's going to happen is, as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe, as soon as we're confident that our members think that it's safe, which will be, I think, in the spring, hopefully earlier in the spring rather than later, we will be back in business. and we will never get back, I don't think, to being quite the same, because we will have lost some people, but to the online game. But on the other hand, there's an awful lot of people who have never played online. I think it's roughly half our membership, and yeah, some of them won't come back either, but I think a lot of them will once they feel secure. If you look at our demographic and just look at the screen in front of you, you can see why people consider themselves to be a bit vulnerable to the possible effects of COVID, and it'll take a while to iron that out, but I'm confident that it will be ironed out, and we'll be doing our best to lead things into the future. In other news, the online international European qualifier took place earlier this year, and our teams qualified for the Bermuda Bowl and the Venice Cup as expected. So despite the logistic problems with that, at one point it was going to be Madeira, then it wasn't, then it was going to be Madeira again, and then finally it was a room in the Elephant and Castle, which isn't quite Madeira, with everybody playing online and everybody refusing to play against the Italian team, which was a decision that the players made for themselves. We put no pressure on them one way or another, but what we did do as a board was we told them that whatever decision they made, we would support them, and there would be nothing by way of reprisals for us for refusing to play. I doubt that fear of that would have prevented them from their boycott of the Italians, but perhaps it added a little reassurance to them. Anyway, they qualified for the Bermuda Bowl, and we wish them and the women's team the best of luck in that and the Venice Cup. I don't want to talk about eBed, not because I don't want to talk about it, but because that's a separate item on the agenda, as are many other things to come. So I'll just leave you with one thought, and it might involve me asking you to wave your arms around in a minute, because it's not practical to turn on everybody's microphones at this point. But I would like you to thank all the staff at Aylesbury, all the volunteers at national level, all the volunteers and staff at county and club level for the Herculean efforts that they have put in since last we met this time last year. It's been truly staggering how many people have stepped up to the plate and made sure that people are looked after, games are provided online or face-to-face, and that communities continue to interact with each other. So we're not going to have a round of applause because we can't really do that. But if I could just ask you all to wave your hands in the air for a moment in appreciation of everybody, that would be gratefully received. Thank you. Okay, on we move. We're going quite quickly, which is good because we do have some things that will take a bit of time coming up. I would like to ask Jeff Smith, the co-lead of the disciplinary panel, to make a presentation about the process of disciplinary cases, which I think, to be fair, most people aren't aware because they don't need to be aware of it. But I think that it might allay some fears, and it might provide some context for any discussions to come. So I think Jeff is going to want to share his screen, but Sam, if you could find Jeff and unmute him.
He is unmuted.
He is unmuted. All right, over to you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Ian. First of all, as Ian says, I'm a member of the disciplinary panel, and I have been trying to guide them towards the framework that is embodied within the bylaws. And this afternoon, I want to talk to you a little bit about the disciplinary process so that you've got a better understanding. Firstly, it's got very little to do with what actually happens at the bridge table that you would expect a TD to rule upon. So I don't want to be under any misunderstanding in that area. Secondly, The laws of bridge, of course, don't provide any framework for us dealing with the actions of members beyond the table. Each national bridge organisation must deal with this in its own constitution. And in our case, this is the bylaws which are voted upon by you, the shareholders. Next, I'd like to just think about what it covers. And the short answer is bad behaviour in all its forms, whether it's at the table or in the administration. It covers player members, affiliated clubs, tournament directors, EBU and county officers. What sort of matters are we talking about here? Well, the answer is a wide variety of things, everything from members bouncing checks on the EBU, physical violence and aggression towards both other members or TDs, prior knowledge of hands, score alteration, online and face-to-face cheating, misbehaviour in public whilst representing the country, etc. And sadly, all of these comments are based upon actual cases that have been heard over the last 4 or 5 years. We used to hear about 1 to 2 cases a year, but unfortunately, since online bridge has escalated, we have had in the last 18 months or so, well over 30 cases brought to hearing. How is it currently dealt with? Well, I'd like to share my screen with you, and I will try and do that now, technology permitting. And let's have a look and see. Right, and I hope that you're now sharing my screen, and I will just run through if you like, the path of what happens when a complaint is received. And on the left-hand side there, you'll see complaint is received, and it's generally first looked at by the Laws and Ethics Committee, and they will ask the question, is this something that should be investigated? They will come to that conclusion based upon the type of complaint it is. I mean, if, for example, they turned around and somebody said that they just simply didn't like somebody else, then the short answer is no. And they will write to the complainant and just generally say this is not the sort of complaint that they can deal with. If the answer is yes, they then pass it to the Prosecution Panel, which is a panel of currently 20 people which have been set up and are answerable to the Laws and Ethics Committee. And 3 of those people will collect the evidence and look further into the complaint. If it is something that relates to what I will call a non-bridge playing matter, then they will collect the evidence and no expert report will generally be required, and then they will move down this line towards considering whether they should prosecute or not. If it is a matter of what we might refer to in a broad sense as cheating, which can certainly cover prior knowledge of hands, it can cover adjustment of bridge mates, it can cover any form of collusion. They will then generally instruct or ask the online ethics investigation group to consider a series of hands, and they will generally consider round about 300 hands. And they do this by appointing 2 analysts who work quite independently, and they have a panel of, at the moment, 9 analysts, and 2 of those analysts will be appointed and will look at the hands without knowing who the other analysts are. And they will mark the suspicious hands, and then eventually they will report back to typically the chairman or the report author, who is Sarah Bell. She will look at the 2 analysts' gradings of hands as to whether they're suspicious, and if she decides that they are, then she will look further into this, and the 3 of them together will then obviously be known to one another, and they will consider in particular the suspicious hands. And ultimately they will produce a report which is referred back then to the Prosecution Panel, and they will then decide whether there is a case to answer. Although a number of people think that all complaints received end up in prosecution, that of course is not the case. And in some cases, if the analyst's suspicious hands do not concur, or there are no suspicious hands or insufficient, then the prosecuting panel will write to the complainant and say, well, we've investigated it, but there is no chance of any prosecution here being successful, either because there is nothing to report or there is insufficient evidence to report on. If the prosecution panel consider there is sufficient, they will then revert back to the Laws and Ethics Committee and ask for authority to prosecute. And the Laws and Ethics Committee will then consider, typically through its chairman and vice chairman, whether there is justification for a prosecution, in which case they will either write to the complainant if the answer is no, or if the answer is yes, they will produce a charge letter. Now, somewhere through this process, in all likelihood, the accused person will be sent what is known as a letter for comment. That will probably occur either round about the start of the investigation or at the conclusion of the report here, where there is appears to be something to answer, and at that stage the accused will have the opportunity of saying, well, no, this is not the case. Now, at the top of this page, you will see that I have two headings there in red. These are people who are, if you like, not impartial. The Laws and Ethics Committee will look to prosecute cases where they feel there is a case to answer. The prosecution panel are effectively appointees of the Laws and Ethics Committee, and they are the same. The online ethics group you'll see is in green there, simply because they are independent. They will look at both suspicious hands and what they call anti-suspicious hands. These are hands where there is clearly no untoward actions, and if they feel that there is no case to answer, they will report accordingly. They are not, again, looking to prosecute. They are looking to be fair and act as an expert. As far as other entities are concerned, you will see there that I have got listed the EBU, who will provide, for example, NGS gradings, and also people like Bridgebase Online, who will provide details of both hands, results of those hands, and also connection information where there is a suspicion that perhaps somebody has been what is referred to as self-kibitzing, because sadly there are people who log on to BBO once to play and log on in another persona to look at other people's hands, so that they effectively have prior knowledge of the hand before they bid or play it. So that connection information again is supplied by Bridgebase Online on request. So that's the process that we're looking at here up to the point of the charge letter. And as soon as the charge letter is issued, the EBU chairman, currently of course Ian, will appoint a disciplinary committee. So that is the situation that we see up to the point of hearing. This presentation here shows us what happens at the time the disciplinary panel is appointed, the disciplinary committee is appointed out of the panel. And I want to rush through this fairly quickly, but it'll give you some idea of the safeguards that we're looking at here. The EBU chairman will appoint a chair of the panel and 2 other members. We will get sent the charge letter and the prosecution evidence, which of course is also sent to the defence. We will also get sent the defence plea. Sometimes people will say, okay, it's a fair cop, we are guilty as charged, in which case the disciplinary committee will merely meet and sanction the accused person. If they plead not guilty, then the disciplinary committee will start to set a calendar for the exchange of information and possibly a case management hearing if it's a more complex case. And we have heard cases both face-to-face and on Zoom. The defence will forward its evidence to both the disciplinary committee and also to the prosecution. And then if they choose to appoint an expert witness of their own, then we expect the two expert witnesses to meet and produce a memorandum of the points on which they agree and the points on which they do not agree. Because no disciplinary committee wants to spend 2 or 3 days hearing experts arguing over percentage chances of bidding or making a slab. At the hearing, these will always follow the same pattern. The prosecution outline their case and call their witnesses, and they will be subject to cross-examination by the defence. The defence will then do likewise, and again, their witnesses will be cross-examined by the prosecution. The prosecution and the defence will sum up, and eventually the disciplinary committee will adjourn to consider their verdict. You will notice that the defence always goes second there. They always have the last word. Having considered our verdict, we will then announce our verdict to the parties. And obviously, if not guilty, the defendant is acquitted. If they are guilty, we invite the prosecution to present any aggravating factors in their view, and the defence to produce any mitigating factors. And that will have a consideration when we come to consider the sanction, because all of the sanctions are within a range. So we then present the sanction, and the L&E secretary will write to the defendant then ultimately with the verdict, the reasons for the verdict, the sanction details, and also set out their right to appeal. If the defendant chooses to appeal, then there is again a procedure to be followed, and all of these procedures are set out firstly in the bylaws, and secondly in further notes that we have produced, because we are anxious to ensure that everybody understands the process. And clearly it is quite evident to us that the process has not been well understood, either by people like yourselves and county officers, and also of course by the defendants. And we are anxious to ensure that defendants fully understand the process and fully engage with it. Again, the appeal process I've set out there, again, works fairly similarly to the disciplinary process. An appeal decision is binding upon all parties. This is made clear in the bylaws. The bylaws govern the way we are to deal with these issues, and that is not up to us to change. So what I would like to do is now just to come back and to deal with some of those points which might help. I'm going to try and come back now to see you face to face if I can. There we are. So firstly, when complaints are made to the English Bridge Union, it's obviously imperative that they are handled and dealt with. They must be dealt with fairly, and the L&E delegates their investigation and process to the Prosecution Panel. They perform a role very similar to that of the Crown Prosecution Service. They're presenting a case and they're not impartial. That is acknowledged and indeed is the right process. The Online Ethics Investigation Group, or OEIG, acts more like an expert witness. They should present the positives and the negatives of the case, and in many cases, the issues will be dropped after the report is completed if they feel there's insufficient evidence of a contravention of the bylaws. The EBU does have a pro bono advisor who will help to provide information on the process that will take place. They don't represent the defendants in the hearing, but they will certainly advise them as to what the situation is and how best they can present themselves. The accused doesn't have to represent themselves. They can ask another bridge player or indeed a non-bridge player to represent themselves. And more recently, we have seen that there has been a trend for both solicitors and indeed barristers to represent some clients. And in other cases, they have chosen local or bridge players that are known to them who they feel will better present their case. The disciplinary panel is the EBU's equivalent of lay magistrates. We're not experts in the law. The Laws and Ethics Secretary performs the task similar to a magistrate's clerk. The disciplinary panel is independent, and we're there to ensure two things above all else. One is to protect the accused against any false accusations or any allegations for which there is inadequate evidence. Excuse me. And secondly, to protect the membership generally against those infringements by the minority who are abusing the membership of our association. We produced a manual guiding members of the disciplinary panel so that we can ensure consistency of practice and adherence to common standards. And this is published on the website for all to see. Equally, there have been guides to the process to produce to try and ensure that everybody who is accused of any infringement does not feel that they're at a disadvantage through any lack of understanding. Finally, this process adopts many of the features of the disciplinary codes promulgated by the World Bridge Federation, the European Bridge League, and the American Contract Bridge League. Scandinavian NBOs have in fact written to us in trying to ensure that all NBOs take a firm view of cheating, as nobody wants banned players transferring to a jurisdiction with lowest standards. And we find that these people are again confronting us with their unethical behaviour. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, knowing you've got such a long agenda, I've skated through things very quickly, but if anyone has any particular questions that they would like to ask, I'm very happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Right.
I see there's quite a lot in the chat box.
There are. So I've been answering some as we go, and so has Jerry. There's, let's see, let's go back and see. This hasn't been answered. How are the 300 hands selected?
That is generally the number of hands that BBO keep on record. Obviously, they don't keep records indefinitely, and they are generally, it's about 300 hands that are retained by them. So it's those 300 that they've got the details of the play, the results, and they have, in fact, all the actions timed. So if anyone has hesitated, for example, that would be clear. But all of those records are maintained back to around about 300 hands.
Okay. I think there was another one just before that, which I missed. Which
I see there's one question there from Malcolm Pryor. Are members of the OEIG who have conducted the analysis always available for cross-examination by the defence? The short answer is no, they're not always available for cross-examination because they're giving their opinion. This is not a factual issue. I mean, clearly, we've all seen panels of experts look at particular hands, and you will find that very rarely do a panel of 6 or 7, even world-class experts, necessarily agree on all the hands. And that is why the two analysts are initially unaware who the other analyst is, and in some cases are not aware whose actions are being questioned. But the short answer is no, they're not always available, but clearly the report author or someone from the OEIG is always available for cross-examination if the defence feel that they wish to.
Okay, I think that matter is also dealt with in a document that was sent around by Peter Clinch as well. I think he gives.
I've got another question here from David Gould in Yorkshire. Nobody is innocent after receiving a letter of comment. Some are not prosecuted due to lack of confirming guilty evidence, so not proven is the alternative. Yes, I mean, the short answer on this is, again, we're governed by the bylaws, and certainly in Appendix A at 9.9, it does say quite clearly here that the Laws and Ethics Committee shall bear the burden of proving to the comfortable satisfaction of the Disciplinary Committee, and in brackets, a standard of proof that is stated to be lower than the criminal standard of beyond reasonable doubt, but higher than the civil standard of balance of probabilities, on clear and convincing evidence that the accused person has engaged in such conduct. I abbreviate that. On the balance of probabilities means 51%. Beyond all reasonable doubt is something like 95%. So I think my interpretation of what paragraph 9.9 says, that comfortable satisfaction is somewhere between those, which I, in my shorthand, refer to as 70%. So based on that, we need to find somebody more than likely that they are guilty. And if they are not guilty, they are innocent. We don't have the not proven verdict that the Scots have. Okay. Alan Wilson from Oxford says, I don't understand why anyone would think nobody is innocent after receiving a letter of comment. This is a letter for comment. Really what they're saying is that there seems to be the substance of a case against somebody, and at that stage the prosecution are inviting a comment. For example, as has occurred in the past, if somebody is bidding exceptionally well in the slam zone, and they always find the marginal slams and they always avoid the slams that don't make, it may be that when a letter of comment is sent out, the accused might turn around and say, I've just spent the last 3 years perfecting a system with my partner so that our slam bidding is much improved. And that is an observation and a comment that the prosecution may well consider in deciding whether to prosecute the accused. So a letter for comment is an important step in the process. Malcolm has come back to me on this question of the expert witnesses and the cross-examination. The report writer is responsible for the report overall, and either the report writer or somebody from the OEIG is available as a witness and is subject to cross-examination. And all OEIG members understand this. And although the analysts who, when you consider having to analyse 300 hands, may not have the time or the availability to stand cross-examination, certainly the report writer and coordinator, typically Sarah or another member of the OEIG, is always available for cross-examination if that's what the defence wish to do.
I think it's also sorry, I'll let that go. Are there any more questions for Jeff? Observations? No? All right, well, I hope that's proved informative. Who said that?
It's Robert Teasdale.
Yes, Robert.
All right.
Are all investigations started as a result of a complaint from another player, or are examination of NGS improvements taken as a investigation?
I think the answer would be it's some and some. Obviously, if a player writes to the EBU with a complaint against another player or a club, for example, yes, those complaints will be taken forward. Yes, where there is a rise in NGS level that is unexpected, that can give rise to the investigation starting.
And who notes that and starts the investigation?
It's the Secretary of the Law and Ethics Committee. Sorry, everybody's looking.
The Laws and Ethics Committee, you said?
Yes. Occasionally complaints come directly to Gordon as well, don't they, Gordon?
I wonder if what was behind the question was whether or not we go and look at everyone's NGSs and start cases ourselves on that basis, which is not the case. Was that what you were wondering, Robert? But if somebody else refers a case to us and says it's on the basis of their NGS, then of course that will be looked at.
Yeah, that's
we don't have we don't have resources or desire to sit around looking at lots of people's NGSs to see if some of them look surprising without any further reason for it.
Yes, I mean, Alan Wolf raises one question here. He writes, how many of the 300 have to be considered as questionable for the experts to think that there is a case? Is any allowance made of the NGS of the individual? Well, I mean, of course, the short answer is that in theory, one hand, if somebody is cheating, makes that person a cheat. In practice, they would look for a significant number. And do they take an allowance of the NGS of the individual? Yes, they would always take advantage of the NGS, the master point rating, and the general experience of the player. What a Grand Master may do would vary considerably to what somebody who learnt last year would necessarily do. And again, they do take account of this when preparing their report. You know, and Alan Mould, again, who is a member of the disciplinary panel, does say, I think it's worthwhile pointing out that there is that a rise in NGS is never sufficient alone to have a prosecution. No, it isn't. I mean, and that's absolutely correct. But of course, the collection of the prosecution evidence is generally something that covers a number of issues. I mean, NGS rating, master point rating, the hands and the evidence from BBO and so on in the case of cheating. But as I say, there are a variety of factors, and the rise in NGS, I mean, we're not talking about a 1 or 2% rise, as Alan points out, 10% rise, which is what we have seen when some people migrate from playing face-to-face to playing online, is what prompts an inquiry.
Okay. Anybody else? Sorry. Who's that?
Rob Richardson, Norfolk.
Hello.
Are any cases instigated by BBO?
They have their own investigation process, but you know, I think that there is, should we say, a liaison process.
So they can be complainant and providers of the evidence to the expert panel?
They may choose to ban players from playing on BBO if they like, but they are not a national bridge organisation per se, but they can refer members to the EBU as a complainant. Can I look at one other comment that I've got here from Alec at Manchester? Are the offenders offered a chance to confess before prosecution and receive a suspended or lesser sentence? The answer to that question is yes. When they get the charge letter to say that they have been charged with an offence under the bylaws, they are always asked how they plead. They can plead guilty or not guilty. Certainly if they plead guilty at that point, that would be regarded as a mitigating sentence, and when members of the disciplinary committee come to consider their sanction, they would certainly be looking at something at the lower end of the scale to reflect the confession.
Okay, I think we really are going to have to wind that up now. We've had some time for questions. Okay, well, thank you very much, Jeff. If anybody has sort of any latter day questions that arise from this, then you can always pump them through Gordon or me, or even the Secretary of the Law and Ethics Committee. I mean, we're always open to discuss these matters.
The disciplinary panel manual and the bylaws, of course, are all produced on the EBU website if people want to look further.
They are indeed. All right, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we move on to a motion from Middlesex. It's actually submitted as one motion, but I think it would probably be more practical to treat it as 4 separate motions. Almost certainly quicker.
Ian, would it be all right if I just spoke to the whole lot as a whole?
I would like you to, but can I just carry on for a moment, please?
Yeah.
Rather than point 2 is changing the criteria for publication to after an appeal to an appeals panel has been heard. You will note that we have already proposed that, and that's in a more detailed bylaw resolution under item 6. No quibble with that at all. So, Lynn, can I ask that we drop item 2, please?
Yes, I'm happy to drop item 2, but there are still things I would like to say about it.
That's fine. If we can go back now to item 1.
Okay.
Sorry, again, this is trying to deal with things so that you don't particularly have to. Item 1, I was considering asking for a stay on this until possibly the end of March or something, just to tidy up some loose ends. But I do agree that the interim playing suspension has done its job and has largely had its day. So rather than fight motion number 1, I'm prepared to concede that and suspend it now. It will need a proper bylaw change, which we'll do the wordage for and get back to at some point, but you can consider it as of now to be suspended. So unless, to be fair, if there is someone now who wants to make a massive case for keeping the temporary suspension order, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Could I not present my case first and then let people speak?
Well, I'm conceding the point, Lynn. I'm conceding points 1 and 2, and you can speak and you can say what you like. Okay. I'm not going to try and stop you saying anything, but I just think that if this is not contested, there's no point in going through huge agony about it. Nobody has, as far as I know, stepped up in favour of the order. So we will suspend it and we will come up with some bylaw wording shortly. Alan Wolf does want to speak. Alan, just in time. Where are you? Go ahead. Are you mute?
All right, okay. Yeah, sorry, I was waving and nobody could pick up on me. A lot of the discussion we're having now is about online cheating. I have knowledge of a case that happened pre-COVID, face-to-face. So it all happened 2 years ago. It's an incredibly strong case, and some of you will know which case it is. And the defence of that individual seems to be prevarication, extension. So much so that for 2 years, that person is now playing very regularly, even though this case is hanging over the top of them. There's no encouragement for anybody to move quickly if that person can carry on playing. So I agree with a lot of what Lynn and Middlesex are saying about the need. There is no incentive at all. The suspension order would make quite a difference.
Okay, well, that's a valid point. Okay, well, in that case, we won't wipe 1 off the agenda. I'll ask Lynn to speak about this motion and carry on, including point 1.
Thank you, Ian. Right, I'd like to start by telling you very briefly how I came to put these motions to you. Like most of you, I had few concerns about the working of the laws and ethics until a very close friend of 40 years was accused of cheating. He decided to fight his case despite feeling from the first that he had already been found guilty. I was involved with helping put together his case and then sat through the 2 days of the hearing at which he was found not guilty. Very shortly after, I was alerted to a case of a social bridge-playing husband and wife in Middlesex who had been found guilty by the disciplinary committee. I watched their entire hearing on a YouTube recording, and it was clear that they had not been able to defend themselves adequately at the hearing. And in fact, there were times when they did not understand what was being said about them. I put them in touch with people who might be able to help them with an appeal and also to judge the merits of their defence. Eventually, they had a rehearing and the case was thrown out. Unfortunately, before they had had a chance to put their side of the story. I'm the chair of Middlesex, And I strongly believe that we need to rid the game of cheating. I'm not a scaremonger, troublemaker, or radical, but I'm deeply concerned about the way the laws and ethics has been functioning. I know that most are good people who feel they're behaving appropriately, but the current procedures are not fit for purpose and are reckless in exposing the EBU to the likelihood of prosecution. I'm basing everything I say today on these two cases, but as I'm sure many of you will be aware, these are far from isolated. So what I was going to say about motion 1 is that if all of those brought before a disciplinary committee were guilty, then starting their suspension at the time of accusation would be acceptable. In a letter to me, Ian commented, "The disciplinary committee always presumes innocence and the onus is on the prosecution to prove the case." But in fact, as quoted by the chair of the disciplinary committee in the Hearns case, this is as he went out to discuss in camera with the members of the disciplinary committee, and I have to say accompanied by the assistant secretary to the Laws and Ethics Committee. God knows what he was doing there, but they didn't turn the cameras off. And what he said in giving guidance was, if the evidence provided by the OEIG demonstrates clearly that the defendant's actions are indicative of collusion, then the evidence is likely to meet the standard of comfortable satisfaction. Therefore, it should be incumbent on the defendant to offer some convincing explanation of their actions. Hardly surprising that there's been a strong feeling among many associated with the process that once the prosecution panel says there's a case to answer, the defendant is presumed guilty. I had a letter from Jerry Cope, and he took issue with Middlesex for offering support to members who had hearings before the disciplinary committee where, in quotes, sufficient evidence has been gathered to establish a prima facie case of cheating. Similarly, the Laws and Ethics minutes have talked about a disappointing outcome when a defendant was found not guilty. In the first Hearn hearing, the defendant presented his case and the disciplinary committee had no interest in asking any questions. So I'll get onto that. It's not surprising that Colin and Jenny Hearn, the Middlesex social players, thought they were in a kangaroo court and were already found guilty. They commented, "We felt we were judged by so-called experts who, in our opinion, were out of touch with the standard of play by the average player. Frankly, their analysis was unintelligible to us." If the disciplinary committee was so independent, they should have been helping Colin and Jenny to put their case in a more coherent manner and to advise them of their rights under the EBU rules, but they did nothing. That the case was later overturned because the evidence was inadequate highlights the failings at this point. The EBU has a duty of care to all members, including those who have been accused of cheating. The case of Dennis Murphy, my friend of 40 years, was brought before some of these regulations came into force, but a whole year passed between the accusation and his being found not guilty. That would have been a whole year in which he would have been named and shamed with his bridge playing community. This length of time is somewhat more than most others at the moment, but we currently have a case in Middlesex where the time elapsed is considerably longer. I feel that until there is a more robust method of addressing the issues around cheating, it is not right to suspend those who are accused. So just briefly on motion 2, because I've agreed that can go ahead. The initial conviction of Colin and Jenny Hearn was posted on the website within hours of their being concluded. Colin and Jenny's experience when accused is typical of many. They said, "You have no idea of the effect this episode has had on our mental and physical health over the last several months. We have been made to feel like common criminals, and this has tested our resilience and relationships with friends and family." After being found guilty at the first hearing, their names were published on the EBU website and an English bridge. The information was obviously circulated to other clubs, as this conviction is still being promoted on other club websites. In fact, the conviction is still there on Google, although the fact that it has been overturned is also available. So their emotional distress continues. I won't go on about that. As it happens, the Hearns' original conviction was overturned by the appeals committee. At the new hearing, a not guilty verdict was found, because the evidence offered by the OEIG was not sufficient to sustain a conviction. The Hearns were not able to present the defence and get their say, but which is a great pity, as they were never allowed to properly defend themselves. Peter Clinch, in his defence of the OEIG, is justifiably upset that cases should not be thrown out because of a procedural nuance or irregularity, and I couldn't agree more. But this was not the case here. The evidence was just not good enough. However, the case needs to be seen as a whole. The evidence needs to be strong, and the procedure needs to be above reproach and technicality free. Publication of people's names like this should just not happen until all the issues are resolved. Now, about motion 3, I'm going to specifically discuss the 2 cases with which I've had experience, but I know these examples are far from unique. Dennis Murphy is a strong player who was essentially accused of having access to hand records and using these to bid slams. His case was investigated by the Prosecution Panel, not the OEIG. His system file was complex, with a large number of transfer sequences designed to get him to the best contract. This was offered to the prosecution as part of the defence evidence. When the analyst's evidence was put forward, it contained multiple errors of fact and scathing and flippant expressions. The errors of fact included attributing slams to Dennis, which had been played by the opposition, hands where the slam had been driven by his partner, and the wrong hand taken as dealer. The language included amazing, very odd, incredible, remarkable, very dubious. That was actually a hand bid by his partner. The prosecution panel chose 39 hands to address out of 611. In fact, once the total hands were analysed, including slams bid but not makeable and those not bid, or those where a better slam was available, Dennis's slam success rate was found to be 30%. The confirmation bias in cherry picking only a few hands led to the original mistakes by the prosecution panel. Despite all this, the final review letter commented, Tony Forrester was a convincing witness. He maintained there were too many remarkable slams bid and made. However, it was a small sample over a long period. In other words, the sample size was inadequate. Frankly, I thought his analysis was inadequate as well. They also noted that the evidence of the complainant was flawed and went unchecked by the EBU. A statistician was chosen by the Laws and Ethics to analyse the data. However, once this was looked at by an independent bridge-playing professor of statistics, the analysis was found to be not fit for purpose. And I'm wondering how many others have been convicted using the same flawed statistical methods, but without access to a bridge-playing professor of statistics. Proceeding to the case of the Hearns, this was investigated by the OEIG. They are social players who have never had a lesson and learn bridge from books. They came to the attention of the Laws and Ethics because they had a significantly increasing NGS based on a run of 10 scores. Now, this NGS was gained in a small pool of players who only ever played with each other. With lockdown, they transferred to another similar online pool. In fact, this situation of a small homogeneous group and change in NGS rankings had already been addressed in the cases of Tony McNiff and Dennis Murphy, and the statistical concept was found to be flawed and not useful in locating cheats. Their hands were then looked at by the OEIG. According to Ian Payne, the OEIG ensures that the standard of the player is taken into account, but this is not according to Peter Clinch. He points out that analysts do not have access to information such as the NGS history or statistical data or knowledge about the player, but are merely asked to investigate the hands provided. I feel that this is a serious error. I am a child psychologist. I've been an expert witness in numerous trials and tribunals involving children, incidentally, always as an officer of the court, not appearing for one side or the other. I would not be an expert witness if an opinion was needed about an adult, and so it is with the OEIG. As Peter Clinch says, the group is composed of expert players, many of whom have NGS ratings higher than the complainants. The Hearns are at best average club players. It's quite clear from reading the comments on the hands that the analysts provided that they have no idea that the suspicious behaviour in which they are involved is absolutely normal from beginners at their stage of learning. They do things like underlead an ace against a trump contract, play the king from king-queen as third hand, overcall with a 4-card suit, never make a negative double. And teachers among you will all recognise that this is common and normal. Dennis Murphy and his partner had been practising their new system in a weak social game. They achieved huge scores in this field and their NGS rankings rose. Tony Forrester was asked about his experience playing with these types of players, and it transpired he hadn't played club bridge in 40 years. It's clear from the comments made about the Hearns that their analysts were in the same position, although possibly they had been handicapped by the insistence that they knew nothing about the defendants. I would maintain that it is essential to know about the defendants, in particular their standard of play, the type of situation in which they play, and their system. So I agree with Peter Clinch that the OEIG and Prosecution Panel are composed of well-qualified, well-meaning people who are trying to do a good job, but it's just not good enough and people are suffering because of it. And finally, motion 4, I hope that by now you will have some understanding of the issues which have concerned me over the past year. You'll not be surprised that I feel the whole system of prosecuting cheats needs to be overhauled. Unfortunately, the EBU has been highly resistant to any offers of help from outside. Richard Winter, who'd worked on Tony McNiff's successful defence, offered to help. Tony Souter offered his statistical experience. Paul Lamford has offered to look at cases and offer an opinion on whether or not cheating has taken place. All have been either ignored or rejected. I asked as chair of Middlesex, and with the backing of the entire Middlesex committee, to discuss these issues with Ian Payne, but was politely rebuffed. Clive Owen, who led the case for Dennis Murphy, was removed from the prosecution panel the following day. Is it any wonder that I suggested to Middlesex members that if they were accused of cheating, they should contact us and we would help with their defence, regardless of their guilt or innocence? I might say on this point that help from the EBU to those in need has not been without issues. Colin and Jenny remembered being told by the pro bono advisor that they could resign from the EBU and it would all be over on one day, and then the following day, they were told this was not the case. Dennis Murphy was told the same. The assistant secretary of the Laws and Ethics, whose wife just happened to be the prosecutor in this case, wrote to them to tell the Hearns that you can make your own presentation if you wish, in brackets, if you do this. It's possible for you to call a witness, but very few have done this in cases I have been present at. These are both totally misleading and downright false. He knew full well that in successful cases, the defendants always made a presentation and always called witnesses to refute and cross-examine the analysts. Sadly, in the case of the Hearns, cross-examination was not possible, despite this being their right under EBU rules, because of the identity of the analyst was kept secret. Eventually, they weren't produced at all for the original hearing. It's clear to me that the OEIG and prosecution panel are not fit for purpose. It's also clear that the EBU is not treating its members with the care and respect they deserve. As well, I feel it's only a matter of time before one of these wrongly accused demands financial retribution for the harm they have suffered. Middlesex have already lost one club because of their disgust at the way the Hearns were treated, and we know of another club which was seriously fragmented as a result of an unsuccessful Laws and Ethics prosecution. We must act now to ensure that the cheats are found guilty, the innocent are reprieved, and the EBU is protected from itself. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Okay, I have a number of points arising from that, which I would dispute. However, I'm not going to launch into a speech now. I think I would rather hear some contributions from the floor and then I will sum up when we're done with that. I am keeping a bit of an eye on the clock, but please feel free. Joy Mail, you just put a message up. Before we carry on, could you elucidate on the message you put up?
Yes, I'm a bit surprised to hear Lynn quote what happened and what advice I gave to the Hearns. I'm a little surprised also to hear you name them, but obviously they've given you their permission for that.
They did. Both Dennis Murphy
Fine.
and the Hearns gave me their permission to use their names.
That's good. Quite a long missive was sent round to county secretaries, and hopefully most of those or all of those county secretaries will now have read a retraction about a lot of the information given in it about the pro bono, which is myself. There was a lot of errors, including the error is what you have, one of the errors is what you have just said, is that I told the Hearns one thing one day and changed it the next. They asked me a question. I said I would contact the EBU and the L&E secretary, and I would come back to them the next day with an answer, which I did. The Hearns, I agree with you. I thought they were quite naive about the court process. They needed a lot of help and a lot of support. And I've got emails from them thanking me for the support that was given them in helping them deal with the terminology and the whole concept of the thing. So I'm a little alarmed that you feel able to make accusations that actually are unfounded and most of which have been retracted. I just want that put on record.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Another person who was, thank you, Tony Russ, another brief round of applause there. Another person who was just named in Lynn's speech was Peter Clinch, also from Sussex. Can you unmute Peter, please?
Have I muted myself?
Oh, well done.
I know, let the dogs loose. I've obviously been quoted a number of times there. I feel sometimes that I've been quoted favourably with one hand, and then that has been immediately taken away with another. But I suppose that's the way it is. What I would like to do, without restating my case or addressing the most recent cross communication from Paul Lamford, is just to read out a statement which has been made on behalf of all of the Sussex shareholders, and hopefully leave it at that. It is this: if only the intellectual horsepower expended on this issue in the exchanges over recent weeks had been pooled and applied to improving the processes involved, we might by now have a consensus on the further changes that would address the concerns expressed. Instead, we have the obviously unhelpful clash of the proposals we see today. We need what we may call a cross-party review of the concerns which lie behind the sarcasm and vitriol, the commitment to resolve them via further changes as necessary. In the meantime, we recommend that shareholders support items 1 and 2, which have already passed, and to reject items 3 and 4. Items 1 and 2 are not in dispute as we see it, whereas items 3 and 4 have the effect of prejudging the outcome of any review that we suggested. This would provide a constructive rather than destructive starting point for the review. Better to look at the scope for improving what we have and raising it to the ground and starting all over again. From our perspective, the disciplinary processes applied to accusations of online cheating have evolved very rapidly over the last 18 months or so, and those involved have driven that evolution with honesty and integrity, despite the limits on resources and the obvious additional pressures of the pandemic. In all those circumstances, it would be nothing short of miraculous if we'd reached perfection in such a short space of time. Let's build on what we have, recognizing the practicalities involved, and deliver the effective regulation which the membership deserves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I reply to that? Because I really agree with what Peter has said there. I feel there is a great need for a cross-party review, a public hearing, some sort of public investigation open to all to look at what's going on. I really want this to work, but I feel that the whole
I think
thing
that's quite what I said, a public hearing.
No, I know you didn't say. I know you said a cross-party review. I think everybody should be involved, not the public, obviously, but the bridge players as a whole need to be involved in this.
Sandra Nicholson from Oxfordshire, you sent me some points which were constructive suggestions earlier today, which I will be passing on to the chair of the L&E, but I think you wanted to make them perhaps briefly so that they were entered into the minutes. Sam, you don't need to write this down because I've got it all in writing and I'll send it to you later. Sandra, can you unmute yourself and speak to us, please? No, unmute.
Got it. Okay.
Got it. Well done.
Right. Thank you, Ian. I think we had a lot of discussion about this in Oxfordshire, and I think we're broadly in agreement with what Peter is saying, but we want to make some more specific suggestions. We feel that in view of the number of cases involved, and we did ask how many there were, and I think we were told earlier there were about 30 over the last 18 months. And the amount of work that needs to go into their investigation and any subsequent hearings, we think it's totally unrealistic to expect the Laws and Ethics Committee to deal with them alone. And so we aren't going to support items 3 and 4 of the motion put forward by Middlesex. But we do think that there are a number of improvements that could and should be made to make sure that the processes of dealing with accusations of cheating or dishonest play are not only fair, but, and this is, I think, the key point, they have to be seen to be fair, both by the people who are accused and their representatives, and also by the membership at large. Now, we've looked at the minutes of the recent Laws and Ethics Committee meetings. It seems they do recognise that improvements are needed, and some of them are already underway, which is very welcome. What we'd like to do is suggest that if they're not already doing so, they should take into account a half a dozen specific points, which, as Ian said, I have already sent to him, but I'll read them out for the benefit of the meeting. So the first one is all aspects of the disciplinary process, including the detailed procedure and clear time limits for each stage that might be involved, should be communicated as early and as clearly as possible to any accused player. And for those cases which proceed to a hearing, adequate time needs to be allowed to prepare a defence once the actual charges are known, because they may not be the same as the things that were sent to them for comment. And 2 weeks to us seems to be a derisory length of time. Any changes to stated time limits should be avoided wherever possible, but if required, should be communicated as soon as known. The second point, which has already been raised, is we think that all investigations and prosecutions should take account of the player's level of experience and not automatically assume that expert bidding and play are normal. And if necessary, players of a similar level of experience should be polled. The third point is to avoid errors, for example, in the choice of data sets. All statistical evidence should be checked by a second qualified person before it's submitted as part of a prosecution. Fourth point, the chair of a hearing panel needs to be completely impartial and cannot be seen in any way to favour either the prosecution or the defence. And in particular, this fifth point, there should be no instances where two people who are closely associated with each other, such as life partners or regular bridge partners, are both directly involved in dealing with the same case, either at the same stage or at different stages of the process. And final point, every effort must be made to minimise the effect on those players who are investigated but not subsequently charged, which appears to be about half the total number dealt with since the establishment of the OEIG.
Okay, thank you, Sandra.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, no, thank you. There's some things in there that sort of already happened, but maybe not in exactly the sense that you think. So we'll we'll minute that, forward it to the chair of the LNE and see what he thinks about that. Now, my little voices tell me that Alan Mould from Manchester would like to say a word.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to speak about 1 and 2 because I think there's pretty much a consensus on them as well. If I can skip over to 4 to begin with at the moment, that everything henceforth will be done by the Laws and Ethics Committee. Frankly, I find this would be funny if it weren't so ridiculous. What is being suggested here is that a panel of 8 people, 4 of whom are going to be more or less new since they've just been elected, should between them take on the roles of the police because they will receive the complaint, the Crown Prosecution Service because they'll decide whether or not it will go forwards, the prosecution, presumably the defence as well, because there's no suggestion in this motion for that anybody has any other involvement in it as well, that they're the judge, the jury and the executioner, that they do the entire process. Apart from the fact that that is manifestly impossible, even in one case, let alone the number we've got, it is also obviously grossly and completely unfair. And I really cannot see why this proposal is seen as a better way forward than the multi-stage process with entirely different sections of people dealing with it that we have now. I just think it is an absurd idea. Let me go back to motion 3 or part 3, whatever you want to call it now. David Byrne, in the paper that has been circulated as the acting chair of the Laws and Ethics Committee, referred to this as appalling, I think. I would like to say something a bit stronger. I think it is shameful. I think it is absolutely shameful that we should even get to this point where we are saying that he has no confidence in the online investigation group or the prosecution panel. We have 2 sets of people here, and I should emphasise, by the way, that I'm not a member of the OEIG, I'm not a member of the prosecution panel, I am a member of the disciplinary panel. We have 2 groups of people who have devoted thousands upon thousands of hours for free to try and rid our game of what, quite frankly, is the open sewer of cheating of online bridge. And it's not just in England, it's across the world. There are hundreds, thousands of cases of online bridge. You can look anywhere and it's occurring at all levels. It's occurring at national level, etc. And if we don't get on top of it, then the game's just not the same game anymore. And indeed, the last missive that Paul Lamford has passed around, which some of you have seen, has actually said, well, you can never get enough evidence, so why bother? Let's just let them carry on cheating. Now, what a counsel of despair that is. I mean, I would not want my national body to take that attitude to it. And frankly, if that is the attitude that it's going to be, well, you can't catch people cheating, let's not bother, it's not a game I any longer want to play. Lynn has referred to at length a couple of cases, and Paul Lamford and Steve Eggington has referred to the same cases as well and things they have passed around. Those are the only cases they have knowledge of, the ones that they have been involved with. All I can say is that what I have knowledge of is the considerably larger number of cases that I have been involved in from the disciplinary panel. I won't speak about the ones that have yet to come to a hearing because that would be entirely inappropriate. But all I would say is that the ones that have come to a hearing so far and gone past, the evidence has been utterly overwhelming. It is not a case that it's, well, it's about this, you know, it's not even a case of comfortable satisfaction. It is well beyond reasonable doubt and out the other side. If someone was pointing a gun at my head and said, find this person not guilty, I still don't think I could find it in myself to do so. So it is entirely possible that in some cases there is sufficient evidence. But I am still just appalled in particular at the idea that we are going to say we have no confidence in all those people who have incredibly generously devoted thousands of hours of their time to try and clean up the game. And I earnestly urge my fellow shareholders to vote against part 3 and motion 3 and motion 4 of this. Thank you.
Okay, unless anybody else has something to add, perhaps we should move on to a vote, but I would like to make a few points myself. Firstly, a vote of confidence in the OEIG. This appears to be based on one case, not even 2 cases, just one case, because as Lynn said, one of the cases about which she is unhappy did not involve the OEIG. There are 10 members of the OEIG. If we were live, I would wheel them in at this point and I'd stand them before you, because they are the same as you. They are volunteers. They are volunteers who have done their best over the last year, giving thousands of hours to clean up the game. So necessary. If you look back, try and remember what it was like this time last year. Everybody was going around accusing everybody else of cheating on BVO. It was our own internal pandemic, and these people stepped up to the mark. I think to pick on them and to even think about proposing a vote of no confidence in them on one case, and in that one case, I can tell you this because I was on the appeal panel, the OEIG evidence was never challenged, as Lynn says, we didn't get that far, and the panel made it quite clear that it did not find it wanting. It just found that it didn't satisfy the comfortable satisfaction level of proof on its own. So on the basis of that, a vote of no confidence is being proposed. I think this is shameful. As far as letting the L&E run everything is concerned, I think the one point that Alan made, that Peter Clinch made in his letter, which David Byrne made in his letter, is so crystal clear, I cannot imagine anyone would think differently. The disciplinary panel has to be independent. It is not driven by the L&E, nor should it be. The L&E are the people bringing the cases. That's why the prosecution panel act as though people are guilty, is because they think they are. The independent disciplinary panel is these people's last line of defense. They should be cherished. The prosecution panel who work hard should be cherished, and the L&E should be cherished. Right, okay. Items 1 and item 2 are not disputed. Sam, are you ready to hold a vote on item 3?
Yes.
Okay.
I have.
The proposal is a vote of no confidence in the OEIG, and Sam, I hope you've got 4 against and abstain. 4 means you support the vote of no confidence for the avoidance of doubt. Sam, send out the voting forms. I'm not going to vote. I'm not. Board members, guests, you're not allowed to vote. Members of staff, you're not allowed to vote.
Ian, it's not letting me vote. It's not accepting my answer.
Okay.
Is anybody else?
I did. The poll closed before I submitted my answer.
Yeah. Same here.
Problem.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
I can't vote either.
give me a second. I'll see if I can
It
relaunch
wasn't
the
ready
poll.
or something like that. Poll hadn't started.
Okay.
It's all right, Sam, no pressure.
Let's try again. shout if you have any issues.
That seems to have worked. Well done.
Okay, we've had 56 people vote.
That sounds about right. Okay.
Okay, I'll end the poll.
We've got a question about proxy votes here. And my understanding when it was discussed beforehand is that if people have proxy votes, they're assumed to be voting for all of them in the same way. And if that's not what you want, if you're voting in a different way for some of your proxies, then you should tell us. We have a list of who has proxy votes, how many. So unless you wish to vote in two different ways for yourself and for your proxies, then they will all be assumed to be voting the same way.
Gordon, has that been a change for last year? Because at last year's AGM, I specifically asked if I could have a vote as a shareholder and a vote as a proxy for somebody who's not going to be there, and was told no, that the proxies had to be different people, that you couldn't vote more than once.
I think that is a change. We're doing this to enable proxies to make some sense in the voting.
Right, okie dokie. Is that going to continue? Because I mean, I specifically arranged for somebody to be here to be a proxy for a shareholder that couldn't be here today, but I'd have just done it myself if I knew I could do that. But last year I was told I couldn't.
Okay. All right, sorry about that.
As to what's happening in the future, we're not anticipating this happening year after year, although of course we'll be prepared for it to if necessary.
But I mean, you can have proxies in face-to-face as well. I mean, yeah, people can put up two hands or a full.
Yes, well, we allow it face-to-face.
And that's what we're trying to replicate here.
Right, okay.
Okay, are we close to results now?
I've sent the details to Karen and Kay for checking. I can share the results with everyone, or I can just share the results with yourself.
Just with me, please.
Just with you. Okay. Hang on.
And I think I'm correct in saying that the answer to Ian Sidgwick is yes. We have, as I said, a list of how many votes and how many proxies everyone has. So yes, that will be taken into account for those of you who have more than one vote.
Okay, I only have the votes in percentage terms. Votes for the motion proposing a vote of no confidence in the OEIG, 9%. Abstentions, 11%. God, I almost got that wrong. This doesn't quite add up. I think there's a percentage involved here somewhere. Voting against the motion, 81%. Thank you. Sam, please launch the fourth point. Again, the motion is everything goes under control of the L&E and they do everything.
Again, let me know.
Thus losing the independent disciplinary panel. That is what you are voting for. Who's in the dance off this week?
Looks like Alan Mole's chair's in the dance off.
It's probably got more life in it than he has. Sorry, that wasn't very kind. Sorry.
I've had 55.
I would on the dance floor.
For those asking, yes, of course we will commit to a review. Yes. Figures that up slightly better this time. In favour of the motion, 4%. Abstentions, 11%. Against the motion, 85%. Thank you all. That's good, in my opinion, but it's not quite good enough. The OEIG, because of the nature of the way it's going, will soon be disbanding. I do not want the OEIG to part after all they have done, knowing that the best we could do for them was not support a vote of no confidence. I'd like to reverse this. I would like somebody from the floor, because I'm not allowed to do it, to propose the following motion. Sam, you won't be able to write this down in time. Please just come back to the recording and note it.
Okay.
This meeting would like to record its thanks to members of the OEIG, led by Steve Green and Sarah Bell, to the Law and Ethics Committee, led previously by Heather Dondy and Francis Hindon, currently led by David Byrne and Tim Rees, to the Prosecution Panel, to the Disciplinary Panel, led by Jeff Smith and Sally Bugden, and to all those outside of those groups who have served on appeals committees, all of them spending inordinate amounts of time over the last year trying to help. Okay, I was going to ask my stooge in the audience to propose this, but I have a proposal from Tim Warren of Surrey, seconded by Sue Phillips of Wiltshire. Sam, can you please present a for, against and abstain card for this, please?
Just for, against, abstain.
Yes, for, against and abstain.
Yeah.
And just call it ad hoc motion or something.
Would you like me to share the results for this one? Or
With
just,
me,
just
please.
with you? Okay.
Okay. Against the motion, 5%, 20% abstentions. I think the abstentions figures are actually high. I think that's people who don't get a vote closing their windows, although obviously a few more real abstentions this time. And in favour, 75%. Thank you all. I will write to the various bodies involved. Onwards, at last. But it's still laws. It's the dreaded bylaw changes. Where I've lost them, happily, some explanatory notes were handed out with them. I think it's rather than my just read that out, which is a bit insulting. I'll assume that you've read them, and we will take them one by one, unless anybody has any questions about them. Any questions? Doesn't look like it. All right.
Ian, presumably there's going to have to be another change to the bylaws anyway in order to dispense with the ISPs now.
Yes, we don't have a properly worded version for that. So we're going to go away and work something out, and then we'll come back with that. We'll suspend the suspension in the interim. We won't drag it out. We'll suspend that now, but we will come back with proper wording for the bylaws and hold a 5-minute extraordinary general meeting sometime in the next few weeks, if that's okay with everybody. Or even if it's not, because it's the only practical way forward that I can see. So that's what we'll be doing. Okay. Are there? It would actually be easier if we could just accept all these en bloc rather than have 6 votes. Does anybody please speak now if you have anything against one of them, which would mean that you chuck the whole lot out? I think they're all fairly, nobody's saying a word, nobody's typing a message. So, right, can please vote in favour of the bylaw changes? I hope poor Sam hasn't set up 6 votes. Have you? Oh, you have. Okay. Can you? Yes. All right. Okay. Well done. My God, that was quick. All right. Okay. Again, don't vote if you haven't got a vote. For 89%, there's a surprise. Probably abstentions 11%, I would guess. Oh no, against 5%, abstentions 6%, unless they don't add up again. Yeah, 90% in favour now. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, I think you'll be pleased to know that I am going to shut up now, because it's treasurer time. For the last time, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jerry Cope, who is mute. That's the best treasurer's report ever, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. So I think the first item we take is the report and accounts, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, which I don't particularly want to say a lot about, as I think they're self-explanatory, and the auditor is also present if there are any technical questions, but we've had no advance notice of any. I think the biggest thing I want to point out in the report and accounts is a very satisfactory result given what went on during 2021, which seems an awful long time ago now, but was only last year's numbers, was the amount of support that we got from government, which we, perhaps not wholly for the minutes, which we pushed to the maximum, and we managed to get £110,000 worth of support from government from various of the strands of support that they offered to us, which was obviously essential. Otherwise, the result would have been catastrophic in financial terms for us. So I commend these accounts to you. I'm very happy to take any questions that are easy ones. Difficult ones would have required pre-notice, please. Anybody prepared to support the endorsement of the accounts or propose the endorsement of the accounts?
Rob Richardson is waving.
Is that thank you, Rob. Anybody second them?
Dean from Leicestershire.
Oh, that's, and Dick's also waving madly, but Dean got in first, I think. Thank you. Are we happy then to endorse them, unless anybody wants a formal vote on the subject? Are we happy to endorse them, NEMCON? And I'll wait for any chat that says otherwise. And Alan has asked a question, what will be the effect of not having government support next year? Will it leave a huge hole? Yes, Alan, it will leave a huge hole. And I will talk about that when we come to some of the motions later on the agenda. Okay, then moving on to my 6th monthly report, which I think is the next item on the agenda. Again, haven't had any questions on that, and I think it's self-explanatory. We're showing a small surplus at the moment, and I had hoped that we would finish just in the black. I'm getting a little bit more pessimistic about that because the bounce back that I was anticipating in October, November isn't happening. And it does look as if will undershoot this year, which is obviously a key element of our income, if you like. The Bridge Warehouse is showing signs of ticking up, and I hope you're all getting your Christmas presents ordered. Some excellent, there's a very good new jigsaw, which I would recommend, which looks completely impossible. But if you've got jigsaw loving friends who then do order one of our new jigsaws from the warehouse. So I think we'll be somewhere around break even at the year end, which again, I think is a pretty good result. Again, Alan, it requires government support to enable us to get there. And we have taken due account of that. Anybody want to ask any questions about the yes, Alan, I'm sure she would. Exactly right. How about a bridge mate? How about something like that? The serious point is that 3 areas: Sims, competitions, Bridge Warehouse, important sources of income. You know, they're not producing the income that they delivered 2 or 3 years, the net income that they delivered 2 or 3 years ago, for obvious reasons. Bridge Warehouse, also biggest price competition from people like Amazon, is also pretty heavy, so our margins have been squeezed a bit. Any questions on the report? All right, good. I could actually get my agenda up.
Oh, sorry, I think we're all thinking about whether we can send Alan a couple of quid towards the jigsaw for his wife.
No, it's a bridge mate. He wants a bridge mate. She wants a bridge mate. She's got a bridge mate and she wants another one.
Oh. Okay.
Is it inflatable?
In while.
Right.
So the answer, is it inflatable? It's a question of, no, I won't go there.
Right. Do we want to move on now to the various motions? And I'll just explain how we will handle these procedurally before asking Yorkshire to start off with their motion.
Yeah.
So basically, this AGM is essentially voting on the increase. And we're taking them in the order of the Yorkshire motion, followed by the Hertfordshire motion, followed by my motion. If the Yorkshire motion passes, we have decided the increase, and therefore both the Hertfordshire motion and my motion fall. We then move on to the Hertfordshire motion if the Yorkshire motion fails. And again, if that passes, then my motion fails and falls, and we won't discuss it. I hope that's reasonably clear and self-explanatory, because it's the AGM's power is around the increase. So having said that, I'll invite, I don't know which of the Yorkshire shareholders is going to introduce their paper.
David Guild is going to do it for us.
Thank you, Leslie.
I'll just unmute. Well, it's a very perplexing time as far as financial forecasting is concerned. I can tell you, as I'm sure you already know, that the clubs are suffering. Some clubs still haven't opened yet. A lot of clubs are actually operating below break even. And the county, Yorkshire County, have recognised that the existence of the county depends on the clubs. And the actual whole of the structure, EBU County Club, depends on the players and the clubs. And so we looked at how we can assist the clubs. And although there are lots of initiatives on marketing and recruitment, actually the immediacy for the clubs is to buy some time. And that is why we've actually looked at our reserves and said, this is a time, if there ever was one, for us to dip into our reserves. And so what we've done is set up grants for the clubs, the restart grants, to assist them. And the grants are between £200 and £1,000. So far, we've assisted 15 clubs, and we've spent nearly £6,000. We're going to spend more than that. And actually, we're going to reduce our reserves by over 20%. Because we believe that now is not the time to actually pad our reserves or even retain the same level of our reserves. Now, when we actually look at the UM situation, in times of stability, Jerry has come to us and said, there's a general policy that we will actually increase UM by the RPI or CPI, whatever actual forecast you're going to use, but basically keep it up with the costs. Now that is actually thrown out of the window by COVID, because COVID takes that stability and rides a sort of coach and horses through that. So we actually then come to a forecast. Now, so we're actually, our comments are on Jerry's forecast. And Jerry is a treasurer, and treasurers are well, they're soothsayers of doom, and sort of based on past forecasts, Jerry is a master of his trade, and it takes a rather pessimistic view, we feel. The thing that we've actually looked at is that it assumes that the number of players remains the same. Now, let me just be absolutely clear. When the accounts were done, and the latest figures that we've got and that you've got are that of the 55,000 members, 30,000 hadn't played bridge for a year. Now, some of those are coming back, and at some stage that will increase. But actually, what Jerry has said is that it's not going to increase as far as the forecast is concerned. Now, we don't think that's accurate. We think that actually the number of people coming back to face-to-face, and we're talking April 2022 to March 2023, will increase. Now, if that increases, then the actual profitability will increase as well. And so we believe that if you get 10% increase, that will actually still meet the target that Jerry is looking for. Now, let me be clear that if we don't get 10% increase, then actually we're all in trouble. And the UM doesn't really matter, to be honest with you, because a lot of clubs will have collapsed and the whole structure will be absolutely creaking. So going with that, we're saying we don't need that increase for that purpose. And that is actually the basis of what we're saying. We're not saying that there's no need for actual reserves. Now, reserves have actually held steady year on year, and at just under £500,000 for the EBU. And Jerry's now forecasting that it's going to break even in the end of 2022, the 21-22 year. So there's no actual massive drop in reserves. And as far as the actual UM increase is concerned, it's not a huge amount. It's 20-something thousand that will actually be expected to come off based on those figures of players not increasing. So we're not talking a huge amount, but actually it is a very strong message to the clubs that now is the time that the EBU want to increase the UM. And we think that's wrong. We also think that there's actually insufficient evidence for it. So our view is not to do that. That's not to say we wouldn't do it at some time in the future. And it may be that actually when that information is available, then it's the time for the EBU to come forward and say, actually, we're not performing as well as we should be. And so we need a increase. And that precedent has been set before at this shareholders meeting where a increase was deferred with the proviso that the EBU could come back later. And that's really our position in a nutshell.
Thank you, David. Anybody else want to come in before I respond?
No, Norman Innes has said something. Norman, do you want to voice your comments or?
No, I think the chat says it, Ian. We need the EBU to survive. Now, whether that means that we have to increase or not, I'm not commenting on. I'm just saying we need to make sure that the EBU survive. Otherwise, we have no game.
Can I say that that can be said every year, and it's actually, if you follow the logic of that, you could increase by whatever you want. You've got to have a rationale, and the rationale is looking at the forecast model. Are we going to meet the target? And we say yes, we are.
That's you told Norman. Jerry.
Indeed. Omicron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One word.
Exactly. So do you really want to, if we do have a situation where none of the clubs improve and some of them actually go backwards and lots of them collapse, are you saying it's more important for the EBU to raise their reserves, or it's actually survival of the clubs? The problem is that they're not disjoint. The survival of the clubs is actually the survival of the EBU. And you may not realise that, but it is the truth.
Thank you. Okay, so can I then come back? As I said originally, there are two motions on the agenda. There's one from Hertfordshire, which I think we can have a good discussion on. And Hertfordshire had the courtesy to come to me beforehand and ask them about their motion, and some amendments were made to the motion based on stuff that I could give them. I had no such courtesy from Yorkshire.
Can I just say that this motion arrived? That's not true, Jerry. Jerry, that's not true.
I'm talking, I had no such courtesy from Yorkshire. It arrived on the last day before motions were due. I could have told them that their figures are flawed in a number of ways. I'm not actually, if you like, pessimistic, but I am prudent as a treasurer, and I think the shareholders would want me to be prudent. Let me look at this in two ways. I'll look at it bottom up and top down. Firstly, bottom up, if you like, taking head on David's calculations. He seems to think that COVID will be all over by March. I don't. I'll answer that very simply. I don't. Secondly, he's confusing membership and receipts. And this is a really important point. We are down 50% on active members at the moment, as I don't actually recognize David's figures, and I would have been able to help him with them had he come to me. But let's take his figures as right, that we're 50% down on active members. We're only 20% down on receipts. So when people come back, I don't expect them to come back in the same ratio. The people who are playing a lot will continue to play a lot. Now, there is some anecdotal evidence that people play more online than face-to-face, which is good for us in terms, and I think that's one of the reasons this ratio has changed. But so it's a completely flawed calculation bottom up. Let me go top down though for a second. David wants to use the year, let me get my years right, 1920 as the base calculation. Well, in that year, we made nearly £200,000 from competitions, from Sims, from the Bridge Warehouse, etc., etc. I'm afraid I'm not going to be forecasting for next year that we'll make anything like that. Therefore, we need to put up by a sensible amount, actually just about what inflation would be over the 2 years, remembering we froze it last year, in order not to make a surplus this year. I don't think there's any chance of us making a surplus next year, but in order to make a loss of somewhere in the range 25 to 40k. My successor, Kay, actually thinks I might be being optimistic. Now, I'm not usually accused of being optimistic, but she thinks I might be being optimistic in that number. So I think that that's a reasonable use of EBU reserves. I'm not trying to keep our reserves at the same level, and we are making some sort of effort to help the clubs by budgeting a loss in the coming year. If this motion doesn't go through, if this motion does go through, we will simply have to cut expenditure, because I don't think we should be budgeting a loss of more than 40,000 quid. So we'll have to look again at staff pay increases, we'll have to look again at investment in membership campaigns, etc., etc. So the effect of this motion, which would help the clubs, I fully accept David's point, it would help the clubs, would actually harm the long-term future of the EBU and probably result in a very big increase the next year, which I'm pleased to say I would not then be proposing. So I would ask you not only to reject this motion, but actually to reject it substantially. And let's have a proper strategic discussion on the Hertfordshire motion, which I think is an interesting motion.
Okay, can I just come back on a point of information?
No.
Point of information. Can I just say that we actually kept to the timetable and sent in 2 motions on the same day. On one of those motions, you came back and gave us a cogent argument for withdrawing it. So we withdrew that. So actually, you would have had enough time to come back on this particular motion as well. And it's a nonsense that we did not give you enough time to actually come back. It's not true, Jerry.
Yeah, yes, it is. The other
you wouldn't
motion,
have been able to resubmit it had I suggested you change your numbers. The only options you had were withdrawal or go. You didn't come and ask me about the numbers.
and the other motion you submitted, which I'm not going to go into detail of course, was much more clear-cut and a straightforward yes or no, and Yorkshire very kindly agreed to withdraw it. But this is much more complex, and as Jerry says, it was this or nothing because you'd left it too late.
No, not true. Not true. You had enough time to come back on the one you decided to come back on. You had enough time to come back on this one. So
okay, well, you're obviously not listening, so there is no point in continuing this conversation. Okay, Jerry.
I think I'm done. So I would ask you not to support this motion, and then let's go on and have a discussion about the Hertfordshire motion, which I think is a much more balanced motion.
Okay, off you go, Sam. Results to me again, please. Okay, I won't bother to read out the abstentions. You can work them out for yourselves, or possibly not. For the motion, 18%, against the motion, 68%. Motion fails. Now, a man that I've been to the pub with in Barnet, he probably doesn't remember. Robert Teasdale, where are you? Would you like to speak to the Hertfordshire motion?
I do remember that, Ian, and I believe I owe you a pint.
I wasn't going to mention that quite yet. Okay.
Heavens. I've never been described as courteous before. Thank you, Jerry. My motion is fairly simple. Your proposal is to hit the counties with the costs for their Greenpoint events by doubling the fees, and I think that's a bit debatable, and done some cost modelling, and looked at what Hertfordshire and Essex, who combined their events, would need to do against our September event this year. We gave the EBU £984 in licence fees, and the counties between them made 928. That was charging a £12 entry fee on 39 tables of pairs and 21 tables of teams. If you go ahead with your increase or doubling of Greenpoint fees, and we didn't do anything different, we would lose £55, and we clearly don't want to run an event where we lose money. So we would have to increase the EBU, the entry fee, and if we increase that to £16, we'd just about approach the same income of £832. That's assuming we had the same number of entries. If we pessimistically thought we didn't get the same number of entries and reduced it to 33 tables of pairs and 16 tables of teams, about a 20% decrease, we would make just £558 income, but give the EBU 1,607. That seems to me to be disproportionate and penalising the counties. Apart from anything else, to encourage face-to-face play in this environment is, I think, not necessarily a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Anybody else want to comment on that before I come back?
Could I say something, Jerry? Is that okay?
Of course. I don't know who the somebody is.
Sorry, it's Alan Mould, Manchester.
Yeah, hi.
My feeling is that this motion's got quite a lot going for it. The thing that concerns me is that part of the rationale for your motion, Jerry, is that the EBU wants to encourage face-to-face bridge. Fine, and that can be seen as a laudable or a very silly idea, depending on where you actually are on the COVID spectrum. But certainly our experience in Manchester, and I can only speak for Manchester, is that our membership are not interested in face-to-face bridge at the moment at all. And what concerns me about this, your motion, and hence why to some extent I'm attracted to this one, is that if what you do in order to try and raise the money is to double the fees for the online Greenpoint events, I worry that what may happen is that people just won't enter the online Greenpoint events because they're so much more expensive, but they won't go back to face at all either. So they'll just stop playing. The net result is that you get reduced numbers of people playing, which is not what we want, and you get reduced income. So it's a double whammy. And this motion, which kind of, as been pointed out, spread it out more, I do wonder whether it's a less all eggs in one basket motion.
Can I come on this, please? Because this idea that we wanted to raise the fee for playing Greenpoint events, you've got to be clear that it's only applying to the online events. It's not going to apply across the board to face-to-face events. The idea is really to get people, as you said, to kind of play face-to-face. I kind of agree with some of this, but the key point is that if we raise the fee for playing online, it's not going to raise substantially the price of a game of bridge. I mean, just look at the price people are playing for an online game of bridge. A green-pointed online game of bridge is £12. The price might go up by £1 or £2, but it's not going to break anyone. It's still very, very cheap. And what it will do is encourage people, I think, in the longer term, to think about going back to face-to-face bridge. And that's the important thing. That was the rationale for doing this. So it's essentially an attempt to redress the balance. I mean, we think it's not just about raising income. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Rob.
I think it would cost us more than £1 or two to make reasonable fees for Greenpoint events.
I think, Robert, you're making a fair margin as it is. So the issue is whether you'd be prepared to share some of that margin, which of course would be an individual county decision. I agree.
May I say something, please?
Peter.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you very much for presenting your motion. The problem I have with this is you haven't given a reason as to why online bridge is, in your words, a bad thing and live bridge is a good thing. All you've said is we want to return to face-to-face bridge.
And I will deal with that point, Peter.
Let me just finish. A lot of people are very happy with online bridge. Now, I can understand that you think there's a pricing differential between what counties are charging and what EBU are charging, and hence more people are playing in county events than EBU events. I get that. But then all you have to do is say to the counties, we'd like to bring in a minimum pricing level. So you could say to the counties, for example, you know what, we don't want you to charge less than £15 per person per day to play in a one-day green-pointed event. And if you're so kind as to want to give us £1 of that increase, we'll accept it. Thank you very much. But to suggest that, you know, at the moment, we've just held the Middlesex Congress this weekend, and in rough figures, I think we paid £1,600 to the EBU for holding it 2 days online. The idea that we would pay £3,200 to you it just won't happen. It's not going to happen. I can tell you, I've spoken to my county colleagues. We just are not prepared to make that much money for the EBU and nothing for us. And also you're suggesting you can have 1 day online only and 1 day live. Again, that's not going to happen. You either have it live or you have it online. Otherwise, the only way we could do that would be to hold it in a club, and the biggest Middlesex club, I think, can hold 20 tables. So we'd have the one online, which will get 50 tables, and one live, which would produce maybe 20 tables. I think it's a flawed thing. You either have it online or you have it live. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Peter. Anybody else want to say anything before I come back?
I'd like to say something.
David.
That is that the rationale for this increase of to green pointers is to actually have no clashes. But when we look at it, there are traditionally 10 one-day events and 20 Congress events run by the counties. It would seem to me that these particular ones should be exempt from any green point increase. And what we're talking about is the additional opportunistic competitions that come in, where the EBU has a choice whether to license them or not. As is being said here already, I think all counties would actually prefer face-to-face for these congresses and one-day events. It's just that it's not possible in the present environment. And I don't think that the EBU should capitalise on that, to be honest. I think it's just grossly unfair. But the actual strategy is wrong as well, because what happens is you either don't run the event or you run it as a black point, and revenues suffer to all consequently.
David, there's no suggestion that people should be allowed, counties should be allowed more green pointed events than they had before, which you seem to think there is. Currently, all counties are given 2 green pointed one-day events per year, most of whom do not run them on the same weekend. They have them at different times. And the suggestion is one of those should be online and one should be, or either both be live or one be online.
But they're diaried, Gordon, and none of them do clash the days. So this argument that is being done to prevent clashes.
Well, you see, the problem is that clashes in online bridge are rather different from clashes before. The calendar, as it was planned over a number of years, relied on the fact that people in one part of the country would not want to play, would not be able to play in an event at the same time in another part of the country. When we have online, immediately we create clashes between counties that are far apart from each other. And it's to try to reduce, this has been a problem over the last year, and it's to try to reduce this problem that it was thought it would be a good idea to not have as many online events, but at the same time to allow some. So this is an attempt to try to produce a balanced calendar that reduces the number of clashes, that stops the larger counties managing to eat up some of the events of the smaller counties. That's what's behind it.
But if you support the traditional events and the dates, then you make your decision on the opportunistic ones. What I'm saying is that those traditional ones should be protected from the price increase.
But they're all traditional ones. There are no opportunistic ones that, as you talk about it. There is no proposal
if
that
I've got Yorkshire run an event, and then, for example, Leicestershire want to come in and run, and we have to run it online because we can't run it face to face, and Leicestershire actually come in and want to run it on the same day, then they are being opportunistic and we are being traditional. And
there's no suggestion that people should have different dates or different numbers of events than before.
I think that's an exchange which other people can take a view on, and personally I think Gordon's 100% right, but others will take their own view. Anybody else want to say anything before I come back? I want to pick up particularly Peter's point that he made to me.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to say something. Obviously, I support this and it was discussed, but I just wonder if we're really looking at context here. The last time I looked at it, 3,500 people only paid in Congress events out of our 55,000 membership. I know it sounds a bit uncomfortable, a doubling for one-off per annum, but are we perhaps over-focusing on the expert players and forgetting about the 50,000 plus non-expert to whom all this is a foreign language? Just a point I would make to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. And I'll perhaps build on that, that if you do vote for this motion, you have to remember that you're voting for a 3p increase. And, you know, and in a sense, David and I differed hugely on his earlier motion. I might think as treasurer that 3p was a bit heavy for the clubs. But let me come back. From a financial point of view, I'm happy to give this motion a tick. I don't have a difficulty with it. So with my pure treasurer's hat on, I don't have a problem with it, which is unlike the Yorkshire motion. With my board member's hat on, though, I do have a problem with it. And that's for the strategic point that I think Peter was inviting me to answer. For the EBU to survive, I think face-to-face bridge has to survive. Because actually, our game, compared with all the other activities that are available online, I think the social element is its USP. I think once we lose that social element, actually we won't get new players in because we'll lose to all the other games that you can play online, which are as intellectually stimulating. I don't play them myself and I don't understand most of them, but I'm told they're as intellectually stimulating and as etc., etc. So in my view, we have to do everything strategically to preserve the face-to-face game and make it as attractive as possible. As I think, as somebody said, I can't remember who, the cost of the online game is actually very small. And if you add on traveling costs, potentially hotel costs and all those sorts of things, the online game is very, very very price plus compared with a face-to-face game. And this is an attempt to redress that balance strategically. So for two reasons. One, I think a 3p increase might be a little far, and that's an odd thing for a treasurer to say. But secondly, I think that we need strategically to grasp this nettle and start taxing. And somebody who wrote to me about this question used the word taxing, and I think they're right. Taxing the online game in the same way that we need to protect, in my view, retail shopping against online shopping. We have to get the taxing of those particular two things right, so that both survive, obviously, but that in particular, from our strategic requirement, that the face-to-face game survives, because that's our USP. That's what will make people learn and continue to play the game. So I'm inviting you not to support the motion, although with a treasurer's hat on, I would be happy to accept it. Thank you.
Yeah, the sort of, I'd like to await a vote from a complete count from Kay and Karen. So now I think we've been going for 2 hours, would be a very good time to take a break, and we'll come back at which in 10 minutes sharp, please, 3:30, and we will then either, if this motion fails, vote for Jerry's motion and then get on to all the election stuff. Then we still have a presentation to come and we have EBED to come. So please back at 3:30 on the dot, please. Thank you. Okay, I make that 3:30 now. Let's have a look for some stragglers. Well, my first page is full of people. Second page about half full of people. Third page gone. All right, well, I think we'll have to start because we have got a lot to do. People can catch up. The vote on the Hertfordshire motion. It was respectable. 21% abstained, 30% voted for the motion, 49% against the motion. So motion fails. So Jerry, back to you.
Thank you. And I mean, I'm going to stop being a board member in a second, but I did recognise from the debate the difficulties that doubling would produce. And it's not an issue for the AGM, it's an issue for the board. And I'm sure the board will listen to some of the comments made about the fee level when they next meet.
Yeah, I think it's important that we come back to that. I agree. Thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think I have one more item left, which is auditors, which I don't know. Tony, are you still online or have you departed yet?
He was still here.
I'm here. I'm here. Well, first, I want you to depart because obviously you shouldn't be around for this vote. But I just wanted to thank you in front of everybody for all the hard work. You've had a very, very difficult year for reasons you and I are aware of. And thank you very much for all the hard work you've put in a time of furlough, which doesn't make auditing easy. Also makes it a lot more tricky. And so we thank you very much. And I wish you all, I'm sure the whole AGM wishes you well. So
yes, just seconded. Thank you very much, Tony.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jerry. Could I just say a quick word?
Of course.
Chairman, yeah, thank you for those kind words. And yes, in particular, can I thank Jerry and also Gordon and his staff in Aylesbury for all the help that they've managed to give us for throughout the audit and over what's been a bit of a tricky time just recently. So yeah, a big thank you to them as well. And I have to say, I mean, it's been very interesting from my point of view as auditor to sit in and listen to your discussions. It's very informative and it's always very useful. So if I may, I would like to hang around at least until you get to the item on EBED, because we also obviously get involved in the preparation of the accounts on EBED. So I'd quite like to hang around there. But
certainly, yes.
Otherwise, thank you very much for.
Yeah, so having forgotten that bit of the item, and I'll go back to the agenda proper, and I don't particularly want to say anything more in favour of my paper. I think the arguments have been well trammelled, and therefore commend the paper to you with my statement that I think the board should look at the licence fee increase again, not necessarily again, but just look at it and just step back and have a think about the debate that's taken place today.
Certainly. All right. So, Sam, voting time. Jerry, if you're voting, you know I can tell afterwards. I get a list,
Oh,
so I'll know.
I voted against, of course.
Oh, right. Okay, that's fine. That's fair enough. Okay, well, it's quite clear I mean, we will await a formal count, which will of course be published in due course, but the figures at the moment, without being audited by Karen and Kay, are for Jerry's motion 59% against 25%. So whatever it is, it'll be in that ballpark. So motion carried. Thank you. Thank you all. Right.
Just one formal of auditors. Are you going to deal with that, Ian, or do you want me to?
Well, can somebody from the floor please propose the appointment of Tony Parks as auditor for next year, please? Anyone?
Happy to do so. Paul Roberts, Merseyside.
Paul Roberts, Merseyside proposes. Tony Russ, Somerset seconds. Okay.
I don't think
any votes against? Stick your hand up. Right. Carried unanimously. Or didn't give people time to stick their hands up, basically. Okay, you're in, Tony, like it or not. Okay, I have the results of the elections that were held. For the board, there were 4 vacancies, 3 of a 3-year period and 1 for a 1-year period. And I will give you the names of the 3 3-year periods and their votes, and the 1-year period and their vote in that order. Kay Preddy, 3 years, 67 votes. Tony Russ, 3 years, 60 votes. So that's the last time you're voting as a shareholder. Catherine Fox, 3 years, 50 votes. Ron Millett, 1 year, 41 votes. I've actually got it in the order. Selection committee, 2 3-year terms, 1 1-year term. The 3-year terms go to, on a tie, not sure I believe that, Mike Bell and David Byrne on 71 votes, Alan Wilson 1 year on 46 votes. And I've left this till last because there might be a codicil to it. 4 people nominated for 4 posts on the L&E. 3 years, David Bakshi, 71 votes. 3 years, Stephen Green, 56 votes. 2 years, Peter Hassenson, 45 votes. 1 year, William Clennell, 39 votes. There is a further vacancy on the committee, and I will accept a nomination from the floor if there is one. Peter Hassenson, unmute yourself.
Hello, I wish to propose Mike Clack from Middlesex. I can tell people a little bit about Mike Clack. He was trained as a statistician at university, went to work for the Bank of England, and then went to work for some American banks in London. He was 7 years chairman of the local golf club successfully, and he's on the Middlesex Disciplinary Panel, and he's a tournament player who played junior Camrose back in the day with Tony Forrester's team, and
carried on playing afterwards.
No, he stopped because of that, I think.
Yeah, that sounds more like it.
Anyway, I spoke to David Byrne, who's the interim chairman of the L&E, and he supported the nomination. So my proposal is that Mike Clack be elected onto the L&E.
Okay, before I ask for a second, I would just like to put in a personal note. I have known Mike Clack for a number of years. I haven't seen him for a while, but then I suppose we haven't really seen anybody. But in my opinion, he is what you might call a thoroughly sound chap. So if somebody would like to second this, Malcolm Pryor, I think we can. I think we probably should do it on a poll. Sam, sorry about this. Do us a quick one. Gordon, can you remind me how many years this is for?
May I just say something? I know you're on a roll. I saw Mike Clack's name mentioned before in other emails, and the point was made that this would leave the Laws and Ethics Committee entirely composed of men. Though Mike Clack must be a lovely man.
Would that be white, middle-class, middle-aged men as well?
I don't know whether they're white or middle class, but I think it's a valid point. Yeah. Having him being the only person proposed now means I don't know whether there are any other people of other genders.
I take on board what you say, and I think a possible alternative, because this person doesn't have to be elected at this meeting, whoever this person taking up this space is. And if the mood of the meeting, they can be appointed by the board and have the same rights. If the mood of the meeting is that we should actively seek someone who is not a white middle-class man, middle-aged man, then on behalf of the board, I will go ahead and do that.
I think that the only point I'd make is that obviously this is for reasons which are well known. A number of the female members have resigned, and this is appears to be, might be wrong, a bit of a rush job, and we haven't had although we've had the tributes from Peter and so on, we haven't had
and me
and you, yeah.
Okay,
you're the so on.
Sorry, can I just add something, Ian, if I may? It's not a rush thing. Our Articles of Association provide for it, and they provide that in the event that there's more vacancies than there are people should be nominated from the floor. I'm not suggesting Michael's the only person. I am suggesting he's a good person. So anybody is free to suggest anybody else, male, female, black, white, whatever they wish. But just to complain that we don't have that is not really helpful. It doesn't change our Articles of Association. So I understand what Peter's saying. My advice is either propose somebody in here and now, or indeed in future, make sure that more people of different types are proposed for the AGM. Thank you very much.
I'd suggest that probably most people didn't know that there was going to be a vacancy and possible to propose people from the floor at the AGM.
I think you're quite right, Paul. I think that is a fair comment. Well, okay, Sam, shall we have not the vote that I just asked you to do? We have two choices on the table. One is elect Mike Clack now. The other one is for the board to investigate the possibility of other potential candidates and then appoint one, which could indeed be Mike Clack, or it could be somebody else. The board will judge who is, as somebody else said, I didn't see who it was and I'm not clicking down, who is the best candidate, regardless.
But I'd like to know your alternative.
Yes.
Since we've already decided we'll need an extraordinary general meeting in the near future, why don't we put that on the agenda of that meeting?
Okay, that's a good idea.
Sorry, can I just say one thing? Why are we going against our Article Association? The whole speeches earlier in the day were about by the disciplinary man. We're sticking to our Article Association. Now you want to break them for no particularly good reason. I don't understand that. Can you explain to me on what basis you're choosing to suspend?
Does it say that we must do this?
Yes.
Where does it say that? If it says that, then fine. But
do you want me to read exactly what it says to you?
Yes, please.
Okay. In the event the number of nominations for a standing committee is received in accordance with the provisions of Article 16.8, which is smaller than the number of vacancies to be filled at the AGM, the chairman shall accept nominations either in writing or orally at the meeting.
Right, so I would suggest that the first bit of that about the vacancies in accordance with whatever that was, were the vacancies that were available at the time the agenda was sent out, and not subsequent vacancies. And I think it's entirely sensible that the proposal that the EGM deals with this matter is one that we ought to progress.
I'm not denying it might be sensible, but it's not what's in our Articles of Association. That's all I am saying. Thank you very much.
Paul Roberts.
I'm sure that is correct, but the reality is, and I'm sure it's somewhere in the small print, I could have worked it out. I was not aware that we were going to be proposing, that there was an extra vacancy which we were going to be proposing at this meeting. Had I been aware, I might well have sought somebody else to increase the diversity of the group. So I think we have two choices. Certainly, I don't wish to vote against this person, whom I've no reason to doubt his suitability, but nor do I want to lose the opportunity to consider whether somebody else could be found who would give us a slightly more diverse team. So I would suggest there's usually, with most constitutions, the opportunity for the chair to exercise some discretion. Well, so I'd suggest to you, Chair, that you exercise that discretion.
Well, I think what we can do is, because we will be having an EGM, I think we will accept this nomination, but postpone the vote until the EGM, which means that we are accepting a nomination from the floor. We are just not voting on it at this moment. Is that generally acceptable? Nod, wave. Yes. Okay. I think that's probably pretty much that's enough of a consensus for that to happen. Okay. So we have one nomination. We will consider it and others in due course. Right. Okay. So flicking around, even with two screens, it's not easy. Election of treasurer. Election of treasurer. One candidate previously. Yes.
Ian, before we move on, there's been quite a lot in the chat about people asking why the two women, the chair and the vice chair of the L&E, resigned. Somebody said it's generally well known, but I don't think it is.
Well, I think what Peter Clinch meant was that it was well known.
That was wrong. I was speaking out of order. I'm sorry. I don't know why they resigned. I just
yeah.
I meant that they knew what they were why they were resigning. I certainly don't.
They have resigned. I am not going to put words in their mouths. It's as simple as that. They have resigned.
Right, that's okay. It's just that I was a bit confused by the statement that it's well known.
No. I mean that was Mr. Clinch letting
that was nonsense from me. I withdraw.
The Hover was getting to his.
I honestly don't know myself.
Well, shut up. Okay.
Look,
all right. Okay. Anyway, before I was so semi-politely interrupted, I was about to tell you that Kay Preddy will take the post of treasurer at the end of this meeting. Welcome aboard, Kay. Kay has been on the board for almost a year and has been working hard with Jerry and with other members of the board. The fruits of some of those labours you will be seeing shortly. Appointment of company secretary. Somebody proposed Gordon Rainsford. Somebody. Okay, David Guild. Somebody second it. Norman Innes. Right. All those in favour? Yes. All those against? No. Right. Okay. Carried. Thank you. Right. Okay, that we've dealt with. Giorgio Provenza, EBED Chief Executive, has been sitting here patiently for the best part of 3 hours. I think it's time to let him have a go. Giorgio, where are you? Are you still here?
Yeah, I hear actually that we're going to do better than this because we have our chair, Lee Guy, with us. And
Oh, is Lee here? Oh, good. Right.
Yeah. And he's going to entertain you all about what we did over the past year. Lee, over to you.
Thank you, Giorgio. Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon, everybody. You look full of energy. Yes, excellent.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, well done. Yes.
Yes, well done. Right, then I'll crack on. So the EBID update for this year. So our focus continues to be to deliver on our mission statement. Mission statement of EBID is very simple, twofold. Get more bridge players into duplicate clubs and to get more young people playing bridge. So that is our focus, and that's what we've been working on for the past year. Obviously, and I won't go into details because you guys know, but not only are we trying to deliver that, but we're trying to deliver it in 2 different environments. Face-to-face, as we hoped it was coming back, and obviously online. So we have our mission, but now we're having to deliver through 2 different channels. In addition, we've had significant challenges keeping the charity effectively alive, given the financial situation of EBID, which is not that dissimilar to EBU. So what have we been doing for the clubs, I hear you saying? So what have we been doing for the clubs? First of all, more teachers. We continue to train teachers, training as many as possible, both online and face-to-face. The more people you can send to us to teach, we will teach them. We currently have around just under 550 EBTA teachers. Those teachers have access to lots of materials that will help them, and obviously their own materials, but will help them continue to teach and develop beginners, novices, and improvers. Now you think 550 teachers, and that's just the EBTA teachers, is a decent amount. But in a recent survey conducted by the EBU, it was found that 49 of 200 respondents said they had effectively no access to teaching. So we've got a concentration of teachers in certain clubs and a quarter of clubs without really any access to teaching. And that's actually relevant to something I'll say later. But we've also been helping existing teachers. We have something called the Continuous Development Program, has an extensive list of courses. And even this year in the COVID world, that's been used over 200 times. Lots of training. We've been focusing, amongst other things, helping teachers go online and use many online platforms. Unfortunately, only 30% roughly of teachers have gone from face-to-face to teaching online. So there's less teachers teaching, which means there's going to be, at least from teachers, less pupils or less players being brought to the clubs. So that's how we're getting more teachers, more players, more duplicate players. TD training is carrying on. Tournament directors, we've been doing that online. We're doing face-to-face. We're doing refresher courses to specifically focus on TD skills that you will need face-to-face, which is obviously different to online. Or greater, should we say, than online. So we've done that. We've done over 50 TDs this year. How are we getting people from the kitchen table to the bridge table? So we have developed something we're calling the transition course. This leverages a very successful product that was run by the Camberley Bridge Club. We used it 3 times pre-COVID. This is free to all EBU clubs, and it essentially takes somebody who's never played in a duplicate, never played with bidding boxes and scoring tools, and helps them understand the mechanism of playing duplicate, and therefore hopefully enables them to more smoothly transition from playing in the kitchen to playing in the club. That's available to all clubs. Some of you have heard me talking about filling in the wide space. So this is something where we're focusing on more new products. Filling in the wide space is just trying to find gaps in services and products that we can provide to help the clubs get more players. We've talked about this before, and we have focused this on the 25% roughly of clubs who don't have teachers and effectively are asking us or have asked us to facilitate the process of teaching teaching players and helping them join their clubs. So we had the Yorkshire pilot, which I think Andy talked about a while back, so I don't intend to talk about that anymore. We've established and running something called EBS Relaxed Games. It is run by eBed. It is duplicate. It's 6 high. It's designed for beginners, novices, to have an environment where they get some supervision, so it's a supervised play. And we want to get people comfortable playing duplicates so they can then join the clubs, even if their skill level is that will be that of a relaxed table rather than the main part of the room. And hopefully with a bit of teaching, then we can take them from the relaxed tables to the main tables. So that's something we've been running for a while. I think, if I remember, and Giorgio's going to correct me, I think we've over 500 different people have played in those games. Okay, get the thumbs up. There's something else we have initiative that we have launched, Giorgio's brainchild. We're calling it the Smart Bridge Initiative. It's in pilot at the moment. The aim of this is to teach people rapidly, pretty much system independent bridge to get them playing. So this isn't an alternative to the multi-year program of teaching people how to play good bridge. It's about how do we get people to the table as quickly as possible. So the idea is the clubs bring us beginners. eBed will teach this smart bridge. It's a 10-week course. They will get playing. The people who want to play, we will send back to the clubs, and the clubs can then decide how they want to teach them or allow them to play again in maybe a relaxed type game. We're running a pilot now. We have 16 people on this pilot, and we will utilize that pilot to determine exactly how we're going to roll this forward. And we will be communicating to all the clubs. So to the extent the clubs are interested in taking us up on this, we will be, of course, talking to you about how we do that. So that's all the stuff we're trying to bring to the EBU clubs. I did also mention Youth Bridge. We now have 3 different competitions going for young people. We have the Inter-Schools League, which is playing for something called the Lord Trophy, which I believe somebody at the House of Lords, if it still exists, will present. It's a year-long online competition, 30 teams from over 17 schools. Not enough state schools for my palate, but anyway, we're doing a great job there. It's got divisions, it's got promotions, it's relegations. It's I think it's a very good environment, and we have 30 teams take that up. We're running a Grand Prix, which is another year-long event. It's got 6 stages. We're doing online at the moment, but we hope to have face-to-face. And in March every year, we do the Schools Cup, which this year we did online. We had 20 teams in 2021. More than we did in 20. So the real focus here is on Youth Bridge, is finding ways to get young people to play together, to play each other, to play some competitive bridge. The Inter-School League allows us to at least segment people, so they're playing equivalent people. So all of those things seem to be going very well, and we're going to continue to look at how we can support more Youth Bridge events. So those are our 2 initiatives, getting more people into clubs. We talked about that. The Youth Bridge. eBed itself. So, and I alluded to this at the start. Our budget this year was that we would fail to cover costs by an amount of £38,000. We're running at a loss. So this year, so that was our budget. 6 months so far, we've done better than that. We've actually broken even. Now, how have we managed to, and I think it's important you understand how we're managing our finance. The first thing we did was get rid of 1/3 of our workforce when COVID hit. eBed now has a grand total of 3 FTEs, doing all that stuff I set out, and a whole bunch of brilliant people helping out pro bono. The other thing we've done, obviously, is that we need to raise funds, and the EBU gives us a donation, which is just over 20% of our costs. So thank you very much for that. We get other donations coming from some strange places. It's just under 10%. As one of the members of the EBU said, we also did a deal with the devil, which of course is Amazon. And please, if you buy on Amazon, use Amazon Smile, because at the moment they're raising, you will give a tiny amount of money to eBed if you buy your Amazon goods on Amazon Smile, and you can pick eBed. We have found people, if we have any interest in giving funds, which is very difficult, do like having a very specific project and not effectively covering the cost of running it. So how do we basically cover the rest of the costs? Because I've talked about 30%. The other 70% is that we have to unfortunately charge for a lot of the things we do. We try and keep that charge as small as possible, but all our teaching services and everything else is we have to charge for. So I think we have done a decent job financially. I think we've done a good job at delivering products. I'm quite sure there are people who wish we'd done more and charged less, but I think I've explained what we focused on and how we're financing everything. And we have a number of another initiatives. We've got Smart Bridge coming up. We're thinking more about the white space. And so we're going to continue to hopefully, we're going to continue to make sure we train teachers, train players, and provide an environment to get them into the club.
Okay, thank you very much, Lee.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Has anybody got any questions? No, doesn't seem to. Oh yes, Norman Innes.
Yeah, just a quick one, Lee. You have a scheme whereby clubs can have a free teacher place every 2 years. Could you extend that to counties? Because I want to launch something county-wide, and I need more teachers, and we need to do something as a county, not just individual clubs.
We'll absolutely have a look at that, Norman. And maybe that's better, because we have found that not everybody who turns up is very motivated from the club. Sometimes it would appear they're filling the spot. But if you've got people who are motivated and will actually do it and want to do it, then we'll see if we can find a way of doing that.
Well, it also would make it easier to run a county-wide sort of recruitment campaign, which is what we were going to do last year before COVID hit. I have no real control over teachers and where they are and who they are and how much they're charging and when they're running. You know, I'd quite like.
No, I don't care about that. It's just what we don't want is somebody to turn up for 3 weeks, take up a spot, and then never appear again.
Yeah, no, but
that's so. You know, we will teach people, but you have to send us people, not you. We really would like people to turn up who actually want to do it, rather than just scratching an itch.
Yes, but I would quite like them to be working, you know, in collaboration with the county, not just on an individual basis, because they're going to make a few bob out.
Okay, so we're happy to look at that, see what we can do.
Okay,
I think
David
it might be an EBU question.
Yes,
as well as an EBED question. I think currently the EBU are financing some of the teaching, so we probably need to look at it jointly.
Yes.
Okay.
I think you're
Just
right.
a question, Lee. You mentioned the EBED survey that was done that showed 25% of clubs do not have access to a teacher. But I think it's equally important that a lot of the clubs which have actually ticked yes, we do, have they got sufficient teaching? And I come across many large clubs that have got one teacher, which may be okay in stable times, but now we need a massive influx of players, and so we've got to change the rules a little bit. Have you got any thoughts on that?
As I said, even though we've got 550-ish EBTA teachers, some, the really successful large clubs can have 8, 9, 10 teachers. So there is the distribution of teachers isn't how we would like it.
So no, I'm thinking of clubs, the large clubs that have only got one teacher. I mean, that's really a bit of a problem.
So I think there is not a lot of teacher educators, but there are teacher educators out there. So if you find people who really want to be taught, we can create classes to teach them. At the moment, we're having issues that we're getting 4 people turning up for a region who want to be taught. So we've ended up effectively not proceeding with a couple of classes. So we've done about Giorgio knows the number, somewhere I think between 6 and 8 this year, and our normal running number will be 10 to 12, roughly. But we can teach, I don't know, 10 to 12 people, but we're often running at 6, which is below that, then we lose money, i.e. we don't cover our costs.
Thank you.
So for us, you know, we're ready in there, and we can find teacher educators. In certain regions it's easier than others. But we will put the classes on. The other thing I strongly encourage is we have people saying, you know, you're holding it in this town and it's 50 miles away, and we go, okay, we'll hold it online, and people say we don't want to learn online. So I hate to bore you with the practical issues, but there are some, between us wanting more teachers collectively and us providing those teachers, the logistics get quite, you know, as one would expect, messy. But we can definitely do the online stuff. And if we get the numbers in a specific location, we can do face-to-face.
Okay.
The representative from Lincolnshire has a question, I think.
Okay, fire away.
Yes, I've been a bit frantic. Something about women not being recognised. I am.
Sorry, did somebody say something?
Someone pushed in front of me, but never mind, it happens. Just one thing, I have been a long-term teacher. I have been going to schools till it all stopped. My problem was, and I did contact EBED, I am not sufficiently intelligent or computer literate to be able to grasp the 1 or 2 workshops we had, and I did ask for extra help to help with that conversion, which wasn't available. That's what I would love, just time to go, or to put that workshop on again, to help us who are teachers to convert to being able to handle the online material, because I just can't handle it at the moment. Right. I have great problem with the Google Classroom.
Okay, so I was about to use some rather provincial language then. Yes,
we're in the sticks, okay.
We're not really happy with Google Classroom.
Oh, right, okay.
I won't use provincial, I use colloquial. We think it, I think it sucks. I tried to use it, gave up. So we are trying to find better ways to deliver that, more easy ways and more intuitive ways to deliver the information to the EBTA teachers and anybody else who joins EBS. What are the problems? What are the boundaries? At the moment, the boundary is money. To be honest, we've had a couple of quotes which range from £20,000 to £25,000 to convert that into a more usable, more familiar kind of website that gives easy access to all the materials within it. As I said at the start, if we're running, or we're budgeted to run at a £38,000 deficit, so I'm sure our newly anointed EBU treasurer, will understand when I say, when I'm running a deficit, I don't have capacity to spend 20,000. Now, we have been talking to Brunel University about getting them to do it for gratis, for free, as part of one of their computer science degrees. Even if Brunel don't do it, I'm sure I can find a university somewhere. Because a lot of the technology stuff is low tech. It's perfect for a computer science project. In the 4th year, they make everybody do it. So they will do it for free because we're a charity. So anyway, so the answer is, we don't like the way it's delivering the information. If you had difficulty with it, you were one of many. We've had a project run by one of the trustees to design and think about what we actually wanted it to look like, which at a minimum was delivering the information in a usable manner. We're now trying to find a way, either by waiting till we raise specific money, or by trying to find a third party who can do this for free, to deliver that to all of the users.
Okay.
Watch the space.
Yeah, watch the space. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm sorry, I'll have to cut this short. I don't think sense there are many more questions, because we've still got quite a lot to get through. So thank you, Lee. Giorgio, you didn't want to say anything as well, did you? No. Can't even see you.
That's okay. Just addressing one of the questions there. We are quite ahead of the other nations when it comes to the technologies and the platforms that we have provided, as difficult to use as our is. Although we are working with the others, for example, with Scotland, we're working together on what we call the 5 Nations program, which is all geared towards youth. So we are pulling together our forces, our resources, our ideas, and best practices to see what we do, what they do, what in Ireland do, and works in schools. So we are in touch with the others to address Ian's question. Nothing else to add from my point of view.
Okay, thanks. Anybody who's been making comments, by the way, when we go through this afterwards, Sam will make sure that any points addressed to Georgia or Lee that haven't been addressed now will be passed on to them. So thank you very much for those. Right, now you can relax a little, most of you can, because we're going to have a little chat about membership strategy. I think, Kay, you're going to lead off this, are you? You still here?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Ian. Yeah. And I think Kath is going to share her screen.
Oh, right. She's doing the technical side. Yes.
She is. Kath, are you okay?
Can't hear you, Kath.
Unmuted.
Thank you.
Right, and can you see the marketing screen?
No.
No?
Not yet.
No.
Okay. Had it a second ago.
Yes.
Now?
Starting.
Ah, yes. Here we are.
Is that, I can't see it.
It's a blank screen, but it's telling us it's screen shared. So
Sorry, it keeps telling me that Zoom has quit unexpectedly. Okay. Sorry, it had told me that it threw me out. It was working beautifully earlier.
Do you want me to share anything on my screen, Kath?
I'll try one more time, Sam, and if it doesn't work, then
okay.
There
we go.
Here we go.
Ah, it's working. Thank you. Sorry.
I have asked for full screen, but it's not. There.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much, Kath. So a lot of what's been said today speaks to how important marketing is and getting new members and people playing bridge. What we'd like to do in this short session is to talk with you about and show you some of the things that we've been working on to market and promote the game. Back in May, you may have been involved, you may remember that we did a short study, a survey that asked your counties about, quite a lot of it asked about COVID, but some of the survey was also about their thoughts about the future of the game and the threats to it and the likely popularity going forward. And there was very strong support that it was very important that we had a countrywide drive to do more to promote the game of bridge in this country, both through marketing it and also by getting more teachers. So following that, we've done some thinking and we've done some work to create some new products and some new activities. Could you turn, Kath? And again. So it's really important that what we do is done both with you, and therefore it's really important that we get your feedback to what we're doing, both the activities and the things that we're doing, but actually on each individual as one activity or product that we're creating. So as we go through this, both now and any time in the future, we're very, very keen to get your feedback on what we show you today and anything that we do later. Could you turn through, Kath? So very important, if we're going to collaborate on our marketing, is that we communicate well. It's important anyway, but communication is going to be very important to us. So we've been thinking a little bit about that. The first thing we did was to write out a communication strategy, which I'm very be keen to share and get your feedback on. And Gail in particular has held some working parties to establish some things that are not working so well and what we might do to improve. And you will see now a single monthly communication which goes to all clubs and counties, which has now started in October, and the details were set out in November, and I'm hopeful that that helps with the communications. But most importantly is communications are critical, so we're very keen that if you think of ways to improve communication or would like to discuss anything with us, please come back, and we're very keen to hear it. Before I go through some of the detail of what we've done, I just want to share with you some sort of our thinking. So our thinking is that we want to create some modern marketing materials that can be tailored to be used nationally, regionally, or locally, both digitally and physically. So we have a set of materials that are slightly different that we can use, and we can use them online, or we can use them physically, we can use them nationally, or we can use them locally. They will all have a common design. Once we do that, we also want to create a much greater presence on social media and traditional media to help promote the game. We also, as Lee mentioned earlier, he is working, and he and his team are working hard to create tools, not just to create more teachers, but actually to create a greater throughput of teaching. So while we don't have enough teachers, maybe we can get a greater throughput of teaching. But we also need to think about the needs of our current membership. And we also want to attract players that play bridge, but aren't currently associated with the EBU. So I'm now going to take you through each of those areas. So if I can ask you to turn over the page, Kath. In this slide and the following few slides, what we've done is thought about each area and what we think is sensible for the EBU to do and what we think is sensible for the counties and clubs to do, which is set out. But central to the modern marketing materials is the leaflet. The leaflet is one component, but the design of it, we are hoping to replicate to the other materials. And that's why it's particularly important. And that will be both the physical one and the digital ones. And we've created a draft, which we'd like to talk with you right now, show you and talk you through it now. And I think Gail is going to do that for you. So Gail, could you take over? And Kath is going to put the leaflet on. Thanks. You're on mute.
Right. Before we actually go through the leaflet, just to explain that these leaflets are intended that they will be printed centrally, sent to Ale. Having been printed, Aylesbury will hold the stock, and then you will be able, as counties, to call off from that stock whenever you need some more of the leaflets or the posters or the postcards, which we should be looking at in a moment. And the hope is that these will be provided free of charge to you. The only cost involved would be for the delivery and postage, whatever. It's hoped that the counties might take stock for their clubs and then use sort of people post within the county, but clubs can call them off if they're prepared to pay the postage as well. but obviously keeping costs down, it might work a good way if counties sort of hold a stock that clubs can call on. So if we could, perhaps this would be the front page of a leaflet. Will be A5 size. It's a folded, it'll come out to a 4-page leaflet, printed on a reasonable quality. We're thinking about 130 weight for it, with a satin finish. So it'll look quite a nice little polished leaflet. What we're trying to get here is the look of something that would be more like a magazine article. So Kay, if you could turn perhaps to the inside. There we go. So when you open up, this would be a double-page spread that would look like this. And to tell people a bit about bridge, our aim was not to make this an advertisement for a course, for a club, for anything specific, but it's an advertisement for the game of bridge. So that's why it's not talking specifically about come and learn, because it might be just more to tell people about the game, but also for social bridge players to encourage them to come to duplicate clubs. So it needs to cover sort of lots of different areas is what we're looking at here. We hope that the idea will be that these leaflets can be distributed around every golf club, doctor's surgery, dentist surgeries, hairdressers, yoga clubs. I was told by a beginner recently when I asked, how did you find out about a course? She said it was pinned up in her yoga class that there was a bridge club happening in the same hall. So there's sort of all sorts of places it could be going to. Could also be going nationally. For instance, we've had contact with the Army. I don't know how many people would be aware of something called the resettlement offices, but everybody who retires from the Army, whatever rank they are, they are given a course, an interview where they are told about their pension rights and given advice about what to do in retirement. And the head of the resettlement in the Army has already said, if we distribute them a bulk load of these, they will get them in every office throughout the county. So that would be something where it could be used nationally, and there could be other times where other things. We're looking for ideas of national places where we could get them. The style of the leaflet has been done. Okay, could turn to the next page. So this is the back page, and obviously big white space. You think, what's that about? That is where you have the opportunity to personalise this leaflet in whatever way you want. So if a county is going to be running some courses, as somebody mentioned earlier, you can put a county contact there. If it's a club, you put the club contact, a teacher, whatever. If it's that you're just trying to persuade people to come and play at a club, you could put the details. We play every Tuesday night. It's not necessarily a course. If you're running a beginner's course, you can put the details of when the beginner's course is in that leaflet. Different way of being able to do it. You could put it to another printers and get it printed, or a Photoshop in place. You could run it through on your own printer if you have the ability. Or, and I know it's the way I think I would do it, would be sheets of sticky labels, get them printed and then stick them on into that white space. If it's going for the national places, like I said, the Army Resettlement Office, for instance, then that would obviously at that point have the EBU details, the EBU contact to go for phone numbers, etc., and the website. But the aim was to make this a leaflet that is personal to you, that is the person that's delivering it. So that's why it's not very heavy on email contact at the moment. Sorry, head office EBU contact at the moment. It's leaving it so it's your leaflet. It is essential that white space is filled in before they're delivered, or it's a waste of space. So there's no point wasting your time walking around delivering them to places. So the aim is for it to be a local campaign that you're delivering leaflets around for, but part of a national look so that everyone is using the same. We've also got, if you could go on, Kath, to the other materials. little postcard, which would be printed, which could be used for whatever anybody wanted to. You might want to just simply send a postcard to someone to say congratulations for making the rank that they've just done, their latest master point rank. Might be running a charity event, you want to give them to people, all sorts of ideas that you might want to do something different for. So that's the idea of the postcard, but having the same coordinated look. And then the poster. And this would be available in both A3 and A4. So the white space would be quite big, obviously, on an A4. So you could be publicising something there. It's also got the QR code. I don't really understand those, but I'm assured that if they zap that, they will get through to the EBU website and the correct area. So I think that's about it that I can go through.
Thanks, Gail. Two things. Thanks very much, Gail. Two things I'd like to add to that. One is you'll note on there that it references an EBU webpage called Playbridge. And I know that Gail is working with others to try to design what that should look like. We want it to be as simple as possible, so it's easy to follow, but it's got to cater for all the different types of inquiries that we might have. So it could be a beginner, it could be somebody that wants to play physically, somebody online, somebody that wants to do it locally, somebody that doesn't, somebody who's an experienced player that wants to reconnect with Bridge. So all sorts of people might be attracted by this leaflet, and we need to develop that web page so that it's simple but answers, finds a way, an easy path for all types that might come to it. Another thing that we are currently debating and would welcome your feedback now or at a later point is whether or not we put the EBU telephone number. I know, as Gail has said, we want it to be, if you're distributing it, you want to attract local people. However, it may be that it's also sensible to put a national number on there. So we're not decided on that, and at some point we will need to decide. But your feedback is sought there. So is there anything more to say about the leaflet, in which case I'll move forward? Support for teaching. I know that Lee's talked to you much more extensively than I had planned to do, but he mentioned these two courses, Smart Bridge and Transition course, both of which are designed to get, well, the first one to get greater throughput for teaching and get more players able to play the game, and then the transition course, which is designed to help people that don't currently play duplicate to be able to play duplicate. Thank you. Now, Kath has also been working very hard on various aspects of the general promotion of the game. So I'm going to ask Kath to talk through those components. Kath.
Hi. Well, our main aim is to make that life easier for counties and clubs and the EBU itself to promote the game of bridge. So at the moment, we did a survey and very, very few clubs or counties have up-to-date social media. And we think that's mainly because the effort to keep social media up to date is not, is quite a lot. So what we've done is we've created a blog that counties and clubs can share, and it make it much easier for them to then just add in their own local things, but keep a up-to-date social media presence. I was going to quickly show you the blog because I'm not sure if everyone's seen it. It's on the EBU website under blog. So it's www.ebu.co.uk/blog. And what we've done is we've split it into 5 C's: counties, competitions, charities, challenge, and celebration. And so if you click on one of those, so say I click counties, then you get all the blogs relating to that. And the communications that Sam has sent to counties and clubs has encouraged counties and clubs to give us blogs if they think they've got something interesting that falls under one of those categories that we can share. An example is the West of England Congress back in October. Shireen, the secretary, I think from Somerset, worked with us to try and make an interesting blog on their Congress and explaining about more things you can do in the local area. We've also, hang on, sorry. I've lost the, put this in the way. There's some information on the Malta to encourage people to go to the Malta things. For example, there's a Feast of St. Paul's shipwreck where the Pope apparently was saved in Malta, and there's a massive firework display the day after the Congress finishes. So it's just to let people know about that. And then there's some competition things. So like we have a Grosvenor coup, which I don't even know what it is, but apparently that's of interest. So if we just go back to the screen. The other thing we've done is the other thing we're doing is creating wrappers. So where we have the postcard, the poster, and the leaflet, we're also creating social media frames. So I don't know if, hang on, let me just show you. We've got this sort of thing that is used on Facebook. So we're getting that sort of thing done with the EBU logo. So any advert or photo can be framed in something which will then link back to the poster and the leaflets. The other thing we have done is we've been working on improving our press coverage. So Sam and I have been building a database of press contacts, and we've done some experiments with template articles across Essex and Wiltshire, and managed to get very similar articles in the local press. The last thing to show you, and I know some of you have seen it already, is the bridge calendar. This is in beta off the calendar of the main EBU website, which is, hang on, sorry, which is here. I won't go through it in detail now, but it basically will allow all counties to add their own events directly into the EBU calendar. If you go to the EBU YouTube channel, you'll find that there is a instruction set that you can run through, which shows you how to use it. I think it's quite intuitive, but if in case it isn't, there is the instructions on the EBU YouTube channel. I think that Kay has already said that we're going to be running some focus groups, and we do really want to gain from the new ideas and experiences that you have had across England. And so would really appreciate anyone who wants to join our focus group and puts together some great ideas to help us make what we're trying to, make the promotion better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I like the leaflet. Well, I liked all of it. We haven't much time, but has anybody got any quick questions for any of the team?
Ian, I haven't yet finished, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had. Sorry, do
So
carry
quick.
on.
I'll try not to be too long, but if you could go back to the presentation, Kath.
Yes, sorry. Are we there? Can you see?
Yep. So, thanks, Kath. For the existing membership, we've been doing under the subcommittee looking at competitions, quite a lot of thoughts on congresses and tournaments. And I know Robert's going to talk to that shortly, so I won't talk much more on that. On master points, we think it's a very attractive, especially for the newer player. Master points are a key reason or key attraction for them. So we want to do everything that we can to promote the interest in master points. So you'll see some of the things that we've done there, but we need to do more yet. In particular, what we've done is send a list of promotions to all clubs and counties of their members. And on retention of players, we talked about some players are not playing at all through the last 2 years or so. I know Ron's got some specific thoughts on that. So Ron, could you give a few minutes of your time talking about retention and what we need to do?
Certainly, yes. Thanks, Kay. There's a section in Ian's report that deals with this. And I think this is a major threat to our organisation. And I don't just mean the EBU, but the counties and the clubs that form part of it. Because if members do not return and they've found the online format outside an affiliated club, or they do return but not to our game, it's going to change our existence. The problem is, as Jerry's hinted, the danger is largely concealed by the high level of activity, which is not quite the same thing as, if you like, footfall into clubs, whether it be virtually or face-to-face. In other words, bridge activity is not just that, it should be about the number of our members who are bridge active. We know that clubs are slowly regaining their confidence and meeting again. And you can see this in October 2019, before the COVID crisis, we had 36,500 active members. The following October 2019, when play was only online, it had crashed to 17,000. This October, it's back to 26,000 and maybe about 29,000 now. But that still means there are at least 7,000 players who used to play regularly who do not play now. And that's a challenge, and we can't ignore it or be inactive about it. And actually, the danger is that the longer we leave getting these people back, the more likely we are to lose them permanently. And everybody will have experienced this in their own area. The problem is, the longer we leave it, the less the friendship and comradeship of playing against people we know becomes a faint memory. And that actually, I believe, is the cement that holds the game together. Now, the EBU cannot remedy this on its own. We will need to work with counties and through them individual clubs. We've created a data bank of names of all those who have not played within the EBU for at least a year. This can be broken down by county and then by individual club and the members within them. We're going to make this available to counties by sending the information directly to them, or it can be obtained through My EBU and then running an absent members report. In this way, counties can encourage and assist clubs in contacting their dormant members. If necessary, the EBU can work closely with a county making these contacts directly on behalf of that county or any of its individual clubs. In other words, to be slightly modest about it, we will be your messenger boy. In my experience, contact by telephone is particularly effective, but that is a personal preference. I have to say that I've been assisted with this by Tim, our Membership Development Officer, and comments from Patrick and also from Gordon. Whichever way the process is started, there's a lot of work to be done here in ensuring that we retain these members. It should be very much like the rest of our membership campaign, of which you're getting a demonstration on the marketing aspect. But working with the core of those who are already nominally our members is the crucial part. We've got to look after and hold on to what we've already got.
Okay, thanks very much, Ron. And just lastly, if I could ask, Kath, thanks. A couple of other things to point out is attracting players who are not currently associated with the EBU. I hope you've been made aware of the offer to non-affiliated clubs, which is gone out. And just very briefly, it allows non-affiliated clubs to join the EBU for free up until, for members, I think it's till April, for clubs, I think it's till October. I know we've had some interest from a number of clubs there, and hopefully that will attract some more clubs yet. We've also, as part of that, we've made a presentation which sets out the affiliation benefits in a form of a presentation which can easily, I hope, be taken to non-affiliated clubs to explain to them why it would be good, not necessarily so much for the club, but certainly for their players to become affiliated. And lastly, we've talked about teaching and the transition course to get non-duplicate players into playing duplicate. So the last couple of slides just has some contact details which you can see at your leisure. So thank you very much for your time. I'll say once again, very keen to get your feedback on what we're doing, the particulars, and also what we're not doing, some new ideas, and us all working together. So thank you very much. Thanks, Ian. Ian?
Sorry, thanks very much. Okay, Kath, Gail, and Ron. A few points have cropped up on the chat, but I don't really think we need to deal with those as questions, as it was more a presentation than the start of an argument. I'd like to move on then, if I may, to what, I mean, nothing personal, that I hope is a brief commentary on the current competition strategy. Rob Laurie in the house.
Yes, I'm aware of time passing quite quickly, and this presentation is in two parts. My plan in the first part is to tell you about the work of the competitions strategy subcommittee. This, I hope, will provide some background and context for what Gordon will be saying in the second part of the presentation, when he'll explain the actual competitions schedule for 2022. We'll take questions at the end. You will have seen that there are 5, it's gone off now, but you will have seen that there are 5 working members serving on the subcommittee. Basically, the lockdown highlighted a problem that has been with us for some time. As Jerry has pointed out, tournament income has been in decline, and we've simply not attracted sufficient numbers of players to our competitions. Regardless of recent events, we would have needed to engage in a root and branch review of our tournaments and competitions. In seeking to achieve this, we have needed to look carefully at what we offer, how we offer it, and why we offer it. These are, of course, basic questions, but you can imagine very important to the planning process. We learned very quickly that we needed to be fleet-footed and flexible in our approach. Our initial plan, following the Eastbourne Summer Congress, was to move back to more face-to-face bridge, but that didn't quite pan out because of the COVID situation. Although we have run leagues and trials face-to-face, all of the major congresses have been online. Again, Ian alluded to this. Well, he spoke about it early on in the meeting. It seems like a long time ago now. As you will hear from Gordon, this will this year include the year-end Congress this December. Having said this, we believe, or certainly believed to a couple of days ago, that things are settling down and that in the next year we'll be in a position to be less reactive and more proactive in our planning. We are aware of the sensitivity of what we're seeking to do. There is a lot of divided opinion as to how we should move forward. We hear this all the time. We have of course consulted with the board and received feedback from individual members and counties. Now that we are more settled, our plan is to expand the subcommittee in the new year to include wider representation from non-board members, because we feel we're a bit closed in at the moment. At the moment, it's simply board members. Okay, I will now talk through some of the main principles and goals that we've adopted in our deliberations. The first of these is to restructure tournaments and competitions in a way that firstly safeguards the future of the EBU. Secondly, provides a basis for the EBU to continue to support the game locally, regionally and nationally. And thirdly, balances the needs and requirements of clubs, counties and the national organisation. In seeking to achieve all of this, we have had to consider our longer term strategy and plans, including decisions about which events should be online and which should be face to face. You've heard all of this. And indeed, which can be mixed or hybrid. We've also been cognizant of the need to maintain our income and remain competitive on price. Consequently, we have reduced the price of our online congresses and have held the price of our face-to-face congresses at 2019 to 2020 levels. Actually, you will have seen this on one of the marketing things on the blog. We've actually incorporated a new holiday congress into the calendar for next year, a river cruise in the Netherlands. We are hopeful that this will bring in much needed income. Another idea is to help support counties, and this is just an idea, with some national infrastructure support for inter and cross-county team competitions, which have become more popular with the online game. This brings me neatly to our second principle, which has been to ensure that any changes to the calendar both support and protect clubs and counties. In the past, I mean, this is what we've been discussing today, really. I'm rehearsing some of the things that were said before. In the past, players would generally choose a Greenpoint event in their locale and region. This has created a market in online play where some events have done well at the expense of others played on the same day. It has led to some events being cancelled at the last minute. That wasn't said. We were very pleased, well, I was anyway, very pleased to see that there was general support for our plan to protect the game. Having said that, we'll think again about the scale of the increase in our fees for the online game. We are conscious, however, that the immediate future remains uncertain, so we are proposing that, this wasn't said, we are proposing that exceptions may be made for arrangements for online games that cannot be easily changed. There will be wriggle room. Just speak to Gordon about your particular situation. Our third principle has been to encourage the development and growth of the game by attracting new players to local, county and national play. We really need more Jack High and 9 High games, and as Lee said, 6 High games, and for clubs and counties to run more Blue Point events, all in the hope of encouraging engagement and progression. It was great to hear about the work of EBED. It's so good to see that they're moving things forward in the way that they are doing now. I mean, particularly for me, it's about encouraging young people to play because they are really the future of the game. Anyway, following the same line, we plan to encourage a significant discounted entry for Swiss events for those players with a master point rank below Premier Regional Master. That's a test. I didn't know, but it's 50 green points. And are in the process of revamping the master point scheme to make it more user-friendly. You heard about that from the marketing people. This is one of the things I'm really pleased about, that the work that we're doing now isn't separate, it's all joined up. We're also looking at other ideas, including ways to revitalise our simultaneous pairs game. Again, we heard from the marketing people, which have been in decline for some considerable time. One idea has been to include a post-game interactive analysis of just a few hands. Anyway, hopefully you will have now have a clearer idea of where we're going with our plans. And so at this point, I'm able, and I've done it quite quickly, to pass over to Gordon, who will guide you through the programme for the forthcoming year. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'm just going to share my screen, hoping that I can. And then everyone see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So this is simply to talk you through everything that we are planning for the next year. The idea is to try and produce a balanced calendar, as I've said before. We recognise that some events, it's essential that they be face-to-face if they possibly can, and those are the Congress type events, the holiday type events, and you will see them listed at the front, at the top. All these congresses we expect to be on face-to-face. Now, obviously, if government regulations or the situation generally changes, that may not be possible, and for that reason, up until now, we've had to have some of them online. But the intention is that in the longer term, medium to long term, they will be the ones that will continue to be face-to-face, because that's very important for them. There are other events where there's a significant advantage to running them online, and one group of events where that's true is county representative events, because it means that people can come from all over the country and play in them. It's no longer harder for people from the northeast and from Cornwall. It's the same for everyone. There is, however, a feeling that when there's a qualifier and a final, that the people who've succeeded in getting to the final, which are smaller events, should be rewarded by having it as face-to-face, which I think they welcome. These events do all have a huge amount of organisational advantage. If you think about the number of boards that are taken up by barometer scored things, think about the size of a venue that's needed for the Tollemache qualifier. These are all very difficult to run face-to-face, although we've managed for up until now. We've just had the Tollemache qualifier, and we asked everyone whether they liked the fact that it was online, and a significant majority preferred it being online to being face-to-face. Even if we consider that those counties who weren't there might have taken a different view, it's still clear that we should continue to run it like that. And of course, it makes it a bit cheaper for people. I shall have a quick look at if we scroll down, there are other competitions that already are run by counties on our behalf. We have the Guernsey and Jersey Congress, Swiss Teams Congress, Harrogate Congress, Great Northern Swiss Pairs, and the Northern Easter. Now, we expect all of these also to remain face-to-face unless there are restrictions that stop them from being done like that. And then we have some other competitions that have been run by us, but in a variety of different ways. And we think that they will work very well online. The Pointer Board Teams is a bit of a specialist, has been a bit of a specialist event, and we think that it could easily have a much wider range if we point out to less experienced players the fact that the techniques are essentially like match-pointed pairs. It's like playing match-pointed pairs, but with your friends as teammates. So we hope that since it's possible to play online from anywhere in the country, those people who might not travel to play in an event might try it out, and that's in January. So we hope that that will widen itself, but it does have this distinct advantage in organisational terms that you don't have to worry about vast numbers of boards being dealt in order to have the flexibility that's needed to run it in the particular way that we would like it to run. National pairs. Once again, we're going to have club heats, and we're going to allow clubs to run them online or face-to-face as they prefer, leading to an online final. The online final last year worked very well, and again, it had the advantage we were able to have a slightly larger final than previously, which was important because we were combining 2 years worth of qualifiers. We won't necessarily have to do that, but it does give us a bit more flexibility if we have it online, that we don't have to worry about movements, that it work for exact numbers of pairs. We can deal with other numbers of pairs. One of the many advantages of online. Portland pairs, that's another one that's very good to be able to allow people to play in all over the country rather than relying on them happening to live near a club that has chosen or has been chosen by us to hold a heat. So we think that that too is suited for online. The National Handicap Pairs is a new event, and it's been unfortunate that it started in the 2 years that COVID was happening, in that it hasn't really yet managed to fulfill what I believe is its potential. Clubs tell us that they would like things for less experienced players. This seems to be an ideal one. It will be run in clubs. Clubs will choose whether or not to run it, and they will be able to choose whether to run it online or face-to-face, or indeed to combine it. Crockford's finals, Again, it's a relatively small event like the Tollemache final, and so having whittled down the numbers from the knockout stage, we expect to continue that face-to-face. It's another one of those events where people who reach the final like to think of it as a bit of a reward, even though it does mean that they have to travel to get there. Masters pairs and rank masters pairs we will have online. They have practical advantages to doing that. Rank masters pairs, there was some question raised about whether or not the players actually would want that. So we did a survey and we asked them, and the answer was clearly that they would prefer it to be online. So that's what we will be doing. Now, all of these things will be subject to review depending on how they go during the year, but that's what we expect to be the case. The other thing that we've looked at is prize money. Seniors events and midweek events currently don't give prize money, and that was in response to their vote that they would prefer to have lower entry fees rather than having prize money. There's one small Edith Kaplan request which gives something for the Summer Seniors Congress. Apart from that, they don't, and that will continue to be the case. And for other events, we are going to reduce the percentage of net income from 17.5% down to 10% that is given for prizes, which we expect to help us keep them more competitively priced than they have been. The one exception is the Shapiro Spring Foursomes. It's a very specific sort of event, and there's sponsorship money, which has allowed the level of prize money to be higher than for any other event, and that will continue. So this is our plan for the next year and going forward, subject to review, subject to what we're allowed to do if government regulations about meeting change. I'm happy to answer questions about that.
Okay, well, thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Rob. Can
We
I
have
ask?
been asked a couple of questions actually. Somebody
Yeah,
asked
well,
about
I'm sorry. Can I finish, please?
Sorry.
Because of the time pressure, if you have asked questions in the chat, Rob or Gordon will answer them via email over the next day or two. I'm sorry, but we really must get on. And if you've got more questions, put them in the chat, please, and we'll pick them up. Right. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Loads of sets of minutes from the board. Any questions on board meeting minutes? Any questions on L&E minutes? I think if we had any of those, they might have come up earlier. Any questions on selection committee minutes? Okay. Item 21, the 2022 Chairman's meeting will be on the 26th of May, which is a Thursday. It'll be at the Young Chelsea Bridge Club, which is now near Ravenscourt Park Station in London. Lunch will be from 12 and the meeting will start at 1. The AGM will be on the same date next year, 30th of November, but that will be at the Royal National Hotel, also starting at 1. Because it's the same date, it'll be a day early. It will be on Wednesday next year. Okay, I have been notified of no other business, but I have some of my own. It cannot have escaped your attention that Jerry Cope is standing down today as treasurer. He has been treasurer for the last 6 years, for which he must have done something very bad in previous existence, but throughout it all he's maintained a positive demeanour, and he has been of enormous help to his fellow officers, Jeremy Dondy and I, for a while, and then subsequently myself and Gillian Fawcett. We've always regarded him as being an adult in the room when we've been having discussions, so he will be a great loss both as a person and as a treasurer. Also going from the board after his 2 periods of 3 years is Anthony Golding. Anthony is one of the quieter board members, but he too has been massively supportive over the last over the last 6 years, and he deals with all those bylaw changes that you get thrown at you at the AGM, and also other legal questions, helps with complaints, all that sort of thing. He's been there for us. So a big thank you to Anthony as well. I'll just mention 2 other people that we have lost from our volunteers party, but 3 in fact. Sarah Bell is no longer with the online ethical investigations group. She got it going. She worked incredibly hard over the last 18 months or so, and she's decided she wants some of her life back. As you've previously heard, Heather Dondy has stepped down as chair of the L&D, and Francis Hindon has stepped down as vice chair. We owe both of them a debt. I won't ask you to do anything other than join me in wishing all these people well, but I would just mention that today is Jerry Cope's 70th birthday. So perhaps as we leave, we might all unmute ourselves and sing happy birthday to our departing treasurer.
Sorry, Ian, before we leave,
yes.
we
What?
still need to do the Sims prizes, if I
Oh,
may.
the Sims prizes. All right, well,
Yes.
we can do that in a minute.
Okay, that's fine.
Right, the Sims prizes.
I've got the bags here ready.
How many are there?
8.
8.
Sorry?
How many are there?
8.
How many prizes?
Yes, 8 in total, yes.
Okay, right.
It's 2 from eBird and 6 from EBU Sims.
Okay, right. Well, in that case, start with the eBed Sims. If somebody could close their eyes, stick their hand in and draw out first one and another.
Kay's going to help me. I'm going to pull one out. First one. My sound's gone. Is that?
Your sound's fine.
Okay. Caterham Bridge Club. Caterham Bridge Club.
Down in Surrey.
Woodbury Bridge Club.
North London.
Okay, so that's EBU. That's eBed.
Okay, and now half a dozen winners for other clubs who've won heats.
Aylesbury Aces.
Oh, the Aylesbury Aces. Bit of, I suspect, a fix, but you know, I'm not prepared to do anything about it.
Northfield Bridge Club.
I don't know. Is that Northfields near Ealing? Surely not.
I have no idea.
Oh well, thank you. This is cracking along, isn't it? It's all a bit southern, isn't it? Come on, someone from up north next.
Try. Hawley.
Hawley is even further south. It's down by London Airport. So Gatwick Airport. Ah, Northfield is in Birmingham. That's nearly north.
Oh no, Bromley North. It's got north in the word, but Bromley is.
Yeah, Bromley North is by Bromley. It's Shortlands Golf Club near Bromley in Kent. Yeah.
New Hartford. Oh,
even Hartford's not really very far north.
Right, I'll do my best. What's that one?
Yeah, I think you're running out of time.
Abingdon. No, that's Oxfordshire.
I'm sorry.
That's it. Well done.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry about that. The north and the west and the east. I mean, far be it from me to suggest that might have been a massive fix, but it will be drawn live next year, and I will be doing the drawing myself. So there. No, thank you very much, Sam.
So why will it not be a fix that year as well?
Well, no, it'll be more of a fix, but it'll be a professionally run fix. Anyway, I think the moment might have passed, but I will still ask you if you will unmute yourselves and join me in singing happy birthday to our treasurer. Just the one verse, okay? 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jerry.
Happy
Well, there was no chance of us all finishing at the same time, since none of us were there at the same time throughout. But thank you all very much anyway. Thank you, Jerry, for everything.
Thanks, Jerry.
And we won't.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Meeting closed. 5:05.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Into the choir competition then.
No, I think we'll let that one go.
EPED need to provide singing lessons, I think, as well.
I reckon we should cut that bit and put it onto YouTube to advertise joining a bridge club.
Not.